Hello everybody and welcome to the timbroadcasts.tv Twitch channel. Today is Sunday the 21st of June and we're in the countryside smack bang in the middle of England at the fictional Aston Grand Prix reverse track for round 1 of Open Endurance Cup 5. There are 4 rounds coming your way for this little revival of Open Endurance Cup season number 5. First off, we're kicking things off today at Aston Grand Prix reverse. Then we'll be moving over to Westhill International WE2 on the 19th of July. And then round number 3 is at Kyoto Ring National Reverse on the 2nd of August. And then round number 4 is at Blackwood Historic Reverse on the 30th of August. All happening this year, so stay tuned. So, my name's Jack Eyre and I'm joined in the commentary box today by Peter Butcher. Hello, Pete.
Hi, Jack. How are you doing?
I'm good, thank you. Yourself?
Yeah, not bad.
Well, I say we're good. Me and Pete have just wrapped up our Le Mans for this year, so pretty tired but excited for the racing that's coming up here today. Our race director and series organiser, Thilo Falkenberg, might also join us in the commentary box at some point and say hello. So,
Hello.
He's there. See, just checking you were there, Thilo. So Thilo's managing everything today, of course. He won't have time to commentate on everything, but hopefully we hear from him later on. Structure for today is 20 minutes of qualifying, followed by 3 hours or approximately 57 laps of racing here. So qualifying started 2 minutes ago. So we'll jump to the cars out on track at the moment, and we'll talk a bit about who's on track. So there are 2 different classes of cars at the moment. We have the NGTR class, which consists of the UFR and XFR within Live for Speed. You can see that's one of the UFRs just there.
Yeah, so as Jack mentioned, we have 2 classes of cars running today. We have the NGTs and the LRFs. More entries for the NGTs this round, Jack.
Yeah, I think the reason for that is, I think, especially like myself, on racing simulators at least, I've always been a huge fan of cars with slick tyres. And I think that's definitely, one of the main reasons that these are such popular cars, because, you can load them up a lot more than you would, say, if you had road tyres, for example. Race cars with slick tyres tend to be a bit lighter, a bit stiffer.
So we're watching Energy Virtual Racing's Kaike Paroppo, who seems to have got his UFR beached in the gravel trap. The outlap here is so long that he's waiting for cars to come past because he doesn't want to go and do another nearly 3-minute outlap. So yeah, he gets underway now.
And you can see that's one of the bad things about having those slick tyres and a car that weighs a lot less. You get a lot less traction in the gravel. So again, to just reiterate the classes of cars, with the NGTR class, which consists of the UFR and the XFR, and we have the Lrf Class, which consists of the FZ5, the RAC, and the LX6. Now, you might be wondering to yourself, how is the balance of performance done and calculated with vastly different cars? And we do it here in Open Endurance Cup via minimum pit stop times. So each car each class will have a certain amount of time it will have to stop for during the race. It can't stop for any less than that. It can stop for more, but again, you're at an advantage, but we'll get into that when the race is underway, and I'll explain to you everything that you need to know. We've got just over 15.5 minutes remaining in qualifying.
Yeah, a heck of a long outlap here, so we won't start seeing times appearing for another minute or so until everybody has made their way round to begin their to complete their first home lap.
Yeah, just a little bit of information on Aston Grand Prix Reverse as well. It's an 8.8 kilometre track, so 5.5 miles. It's a mammoth of a track. 17 corners in total, 10 to the left and 7 to the right in the reverse configuration, of course. So it'd be curious to see if drivers' qualifying setups last more than one lap. Sometimes we've said in previous broadcasts that, especially on Live for Speed and other sims like iRacing, for example, you want really the lowest pressure you can possibly run to get the most heat into the tyres and get the most performance out of your car, kind of thing. But with slick tyres, the less pressure obviously you have in them, the hotter they get. It's quite hard to keep them alive for more than a couple laps. So driver's got a pretty long out lap here, and then a pretty long fast lap. So by the end of their second lap, which would be their fast lap, their tyres might be just too hot to carry on. So
got a huge gaggle of cars exiting the double hairpin section in the middle of the lap, and one thing I'm going to notice is they're all very close together. We've got a pack of 3 XFRs who are basically on top of each other. In fact, there's a UFR in the mix, and this is not what you want in a qualifying session that's really short. You don't want to be tripping up over each other. Here we can see a launch racing car in the middle of the 2 Born to Race teams, and we have our first times on the board, Jack.
yeah, we do indeed. So our fastest lap at the moment, it's just been pipped. Actually, I was going to say it's almost been matched, but no, by a complete second. It's been demolished at the moment. So pole Inferno number 75, a 3-minute 2.62. So you see how the UFRs, well, I say that as a UFR unfortunately spectates down the straight. The XFR is just so much faster in a straight line.
Yeah, this is where this balance of performance feature is going to be very interesting to see how that plays out, because obviously in qualifying we're probably going to see the XFRs getting the better times potentially. We'll wait and see, and that will hopefully shuffle itself out in the race as part of the mandatory pit stop times that these cars will have to serve. It's interesting to note that those times are served over the duration of the race and not in one individual pit stop, although
Yes.
some drivers may just make the one pit stop, I'm hearing.
Yeah, so depending on the number of stops you take, you'd have to meet that minimum pit stop time. So again, like Pete said, if you stop once, you have to do the whole thing. If you planned for a 2-stop, you could spread the minimum time over a few pit stops. So it's a team entry this time around, of course, as always, and up to 3 drivers can be in each car. We'll run you through the teams at the end of qualifying, because we've got 12 minutes remaining and a short 10-minute break, and then the race will start on the hour.
Yeah, we've finally seen some times from some drivers who are driving in the Lrf class. Not seen many of those today. There are only 5 drivers in this class entered into the championship currently. If you are watching this and this is the first time you're hearing about Open Endurance Cup and you think, oh heck, I need to get involved, you can. Sign-ups are still open on the LFS forum, and we'd quite like some more drivers in the Lrf class if you're up for it. But yeah, feel free to join either class. We have Fragmaster's number. He's in the number 22 RAC, a bold choice, and Toga for LFS Hungaria is driving the LX6. He's joined today by Laszlo Kovac, so that's a team. Important to note that some of the cars on track are only being driven by one driver. This is a 3-hour series, and that's easily doable by one driver. So this series allows solo entrance as well as team entrance. Back to you, Jack.
Yes, and we'll be braving the entire 3 hours on their own, but just a little bit of information to kind of show you how different all the cars are within each class. I think we can bring a little graphic up at the moment. We'll go through the NGTR class first. So you can see that the UFR But you can see that the UFR GTR, the first one in the list, has a 1.4 litre inline 4-cylinder. But look at the power to weight ratio. Look at the difference between the two. 50 horsepower difference and 240 kilogram difference as well. So you wouldn't think that these two, being as different as they are, would you know, churn out lap times so similar. Obviously the power to weight ratio, you know, obviously the UFR is lighter and less powerful, so we'd imagine they would scale together, but I think the power to weight ratio is something like 35 horsepower per ton different, and that's quite a lot when you're wanting to you know, get very close racing. Moving on to the Lrf class structure, you can see that the vast differences between the three cars in this class. I mean, it's unbelievable, really. You've got an FZ5, which is essentially, you know, a flat six Porsche that weighs 1,380 kilograms, 3.6 litre naturally aspirated screaming engine, and then you've got the RAC, which is just a small little 2 litre turbocharged inline four. But look at the weight, 800 kilograms, insane. And then the LX6, which is essentially just a Caterham, really, a very similar style of car. 1.8 litre inline six, naturally aspirated, 190 brake horsepower, so even less than the RAC, and 539 kilograms. So again, this is why we're doing the minimum pit stop times. Obviously within LFS you can take voluntary intake restrictions and add weight and ballast to your car, but to make it fair for each round kind of thing, minimum pit stop times have been implemented, so we'll see how close the cars are in the race after the pit stops and see where they come out, where the checkered flag lies, see which of the three with the best choice, and if there are any clear differences between the cars, or whether they're all nice and close, which is what we like to see. So giving drivers a few more minutes to get some more times up on the board. 17 drivers have set times. We've got just over 8 minutes of qualifying remaining. Inferno still out in front in the number 75 machine, just under 2/10 clear of everybody else who set a time with 3 minute 2.02. So can anybody get close to that time? Can anybody beat it, get in the 3 minute ones? What will we see? Now, during the little practice session that we saw just before qualifying commenced, plenty of people were taking turn number 17, the almost reverse parabolica, the final corner on the track, very, very wide, and if you catch the grass or the gravel at all, you just get absolutely flung off into the gravel trap, and if you don't hit the wall, it's going to take you a while to recover. So I'll be curious to see how many liberties and how much drivers are pushing during this qualifying session.
Yeah, so interesting to see that the XFR of Climbs here, the number 7 XFR, is 1.1 seconds away from the two UFRs that are currently leading the way in this qualifying session.
So Climbs, I believe, is he on his outlap? I think he is, yes. You can see the blue flag on my screen at least, because there is a faster car on a fast lap just a bit further behind him on track, so I think we'll run on board with him for now. However, it is a long lap, so we'll see. If anything gets changed up, we'll jump away. But you can see through turn number 1, the curbs are incredibly high. Up the hill through to turn number 2, the 180 degree, almost cambered corner round to the left. It brings you along to turn number 3, which is the first apex on the left. Here you can see where the curb starts. This is turn number 3, down the hill under the bridge, and the second little curb here on the left is turn number 4, again under the other bridge, through the long sweeping. It's like a left kink almost, and you can see the cones for where the other layouts for Aston go. We're going right now this sweeping turn number 5 underneath the Michelin bridge, and then the track drops away from you, cambers, and then lifts up again round to the left through turn number 6. It's incredible how much you can push the cars here. In a lot of cars it's completely flat out in this sector, especially in the single seaters. It's a very fun undulating part of the track is the end of sector 1 and the entirety of sector 2 really. So again round turn number 9 to the right, and then you've got a nice straight line braking zone at least for turn number 10, but the track drops away from you as you turn around the corner. You've got to make sure that to use as much as the exit curb as you have. You can see we're taking the extended turn number 11, so you can see the cones. Maybe you can see the cones with the track map just there. We're taking the long way around turn number 11. You can see how much of the runoff you use on the right to set yourself up for that left-hander. Long straight now, all the way down. We're not running the corkscrew here at Aston Grand Prix. We are going straight past it, which was a little cut-off over to the right there. We're going round to turn number 12 now, and this is where it gets very slow. Slowest part of the track, hairpin corners, and with the front-wheel drive XFR like this, you've got to be incredibly careful to keep the tyres healthy and the temperature down so you can get the traction that you need. And with the curbs being high, it depends on, of course, what differential settings you're running, because you don't want to cause any wheel spin whatsoever. You can see the other pit lane for the other layouts of Aston through the left of turn number 16, as we've seen a couple of position changes now for third and fourth. Some still getting closer to Inferno. However, Inferno is the only one to break into the 3-minute ones at the moment. He's about 4 tenths, just over 4 tenths faster than anybody else. So what can Climbs do from P5 currently? A nice second split at 2-minute 8.39, approaching the 3-minute 2 mark. It is an improvement. He moves up into 4th position with a 3-minute 3.17 lap time. Now he's got to take over a second off of that. He wants to get up to the top of the leaderboard. He needs to gain just over half a second to even climb into 3rd position. So I'm just looking at the little graph that I have for tyre temperatures. Of course, I can see them. Unfortunately, you can't. The inside of the front right for Climbs is quite warm, so I wonder if he'll be able to get another lap out of these tyres, or whether they're just a bit too hot on the surface.
Ripe from Last Lap Motorsports, the number 34 machine, popped up into 3rd place while Jack was doing his nice run through of Climbs' XFR lap there. There's a few LLM drivers taking place in this, not under the LLM name. We'll get into that later, but yeah, Ripe with a nice time. Currently 8 tenths off the pole time.
Yeah, I believe.
Yeah, it looks like he's on another lap.
Is he on a lap or an out lap? Because all his tyres to me look cold, at least apart from the surface of the front left.
Well, he has time to get round and set another one. He was on a lap when the clock ticked down from 3, so yes, we'll see if he can improve from there.
So he's on R3, R2 at the moment. So the way tyre compounds work in LFS, at least R1 is the softest, R3 is the hardest, at least for slick tyres. So Ripe choosing to run the hardest compound available on the front and the medium on the rear of his car. Of course, with the front wheel drive car. Oh, as he just runs wide there out of turn number 13. He's not going to be happy with himself if he was on a fast lap. You can see trying to scrub his tyres off. You actually do pick debris and grass and dirt up from running wide in Live for Speed. So he wants to make sure his tyres are completely scrubbed off, of course. He's got 3 corners before he can start his final flying lap, and with just over a minute remaining in the session, there are only a few cars behind him that will make it around in time.
Yeah, well, we'll see if anyone does improve in this last ditch attempt. It's a long lap, and all of these cars in this series are tricky, especially around Aston Grand Prix reversed. It's such a long out lap, such a long hot lap, that there's so much that can go wrong. Here comes Ripe. Down to the start finish line to begin. Yeah, he'll have time. He's got 40 seconds in hand. We'll keep an eye on who the last car across the line will be.
The Ripe, unfortunately, just after starting his attempt, joined the spectators after a mistake in turn number 1, so he will not have chance to set another lap. Oh, there's a huge crash. Michael had a bit of a moment into turn number 1, so drivers wanting to give it their all in the dying moments of qualifying, and it's cashing them out.
Coming round to complete his final lap of qualifying as the timer ticks down to 0 is one of the launch racing cars, number 55. A long way off the pace, over 9 seconds off the pole time. Can they improve from currently P17, actually splitting the Lrf class? And it is an improvement. And the number 55 launch racing car finds itself in P14 now. Number 33, Alberto, is the last car that will complete a lap in this session. Currently entering the second part of the back straight complex. Just the 2 hairpins and the final reverse parabolica to go for Alberto. He's currently in P12. Under the bridge he comes. Such a long lap here. Alberto's time a 3:05.27. This looks like a good time. Nice wide entry into the first part, tightening up on the exit. Runs a little bit wide, can't get the power down particularly early. Over the dummy grid and under the Michelin footbridge. And Alberto comes past pit entry and across the line to conclude the qualifying session. And he does not improve and gives us a nice pirouette to finish. So Jack, the first grid set for the first round of the Open Endurance Cup. 18 cars across 2 classes. Looks like everybody has got themselves into where their class should be, so there's a nice divide between the 2 classes.
Yeah, you can see the huge spread of times there. So the fastest pipped at the last minute by Takahashi. I believe that is the Akagi Red Suns car in pole position at the moment. The number 1 car in the number 1 spot with a 3-minute 1.54, and the slowest time we've seen is that Fragmasters? Is that the RAC down in 19th position with 3-minute 15? So it'd be curious to see how the race unfolds. Of course, the RAC's pit stop is the shortest of all 3 minimum pit stop times in the is it the it's the Lrf class. Yeah. That's it. No, sorry, didn't want to say LFR.
LRF.
Just wanted to make sure I got it right. That's all. So yeah, 19 cars in total set in lap times. You can see again the outlap's well over, about 3 minutes 25 for an outlap. 20 minutes is not a long time when it takes you, around 6-7 minutes to just get one fast lap in, obviously including the outlap.
Yeah, absolutely. Do you want to run us down the order, Jack, of the 18 cars who have qualified?
Yeah, so we'll run through all the current qualifying times. Let's have a look. So in pole position at the moment, Takahashi sets the fastest lap for Akagi Red Suns, which is a collaboration of Last Lap Motorsport and Team Sidus. They're in the UFR today, and they went fastest with a 3-minute 1.54. Inferno for Cruise God in second position. Also in the UFR, 3-minute 1.79, so just over 2/10 shy of pole position, but you can see just how close they are. Right for Last Lap Motorsports in P number 3, again just shy of a second behind P number 2 and just over a second behind first place in the UFR again. So again, 3 UFRs on top. So you would have thought, at least for qualifying, the UFR would have been the at least on paper, the fastest car of the two in the NGTR class. Then we have an XFR to kind of in the mix. The highest qualifying XFR is Climbs for Google Hop Racing Team in P number 4. Kaike Propo for Energy Virtual Racing in the UFR in P number 5. Then we've got iSaber for Concept Racing, the number 42 machine, also a UFR in P number 6. Got David Duffin for Launch Racing in the XFR in P number 7, followed by Paul Duffin for Launch Racing, also number 88 machine in P number 8. We've got Scattle for Born to Race in P9. Twin Cam for Born to Race, Scattle's teammate, the number 86 machine in P number 10. Michael for Free Candy Racing, number 47, is in P11. Alberto for Pocket Lugan team, number 33, in 12th position. And we've got Kaup in P number 13 for Launch Racing, followed by Michael Duffin. Or is that Matthew Duffin? I apologise. Either way, number 55 for Launch Racing in P number 14. So Mr. Fetch for the correctly named Team Fetch in P number 15. In the XFR, 3-minute 10.64. So quite a bit down the order. Whether he didn't get chance to set the cleanest lap he would have liked, we will see if he can make up for that in the race. But closely followed is Iltrida, is that? I can't quite see, unfortunately. My text size on my monitor is a bit small. Just behind him, very close times there in the UFR, only 2/10 shy of P number 16. P number 15, sorry, and then we've got Toga for LFS.HU, number 99 in the LX6, 3 minutes 11.74. So just only a second away from a UFR, which is a lot lighter. Well, actually, I think the LX6 and the UFR are very similar, actually. However, the UFR's, of course, got slick tyres. And then we've got number for Fragmaster in the RAC, rounding out P number 18 with a 3-minute 15.85. But a lot shorter pit stop during the 3-hour race that we've got coming up for you. So we'll see where that RAC ends up later on. So the race starts on the hour. According to my clock, at least, it is 59 minutes past, so we're not going to run to a break just yet. But yeah, what are your predictions for the race, Pete? How do you think this is going to unfold?
I have absolutely no idea, Jack. And that's the exciting thing about a new series. Yeah, we've had four iterations of the Open Endurance Cup already so far in previous years. But yeah, this is a first for me, definitely seeing these two classes going at it. So really looking forward to that right now.
Yeah, I'm really actually curious about the minimum pit stop times more than anything else. Of course, when we get to the pit stop windows, when we see the first set of cars that want to come in and, change the tyres potentially, put some more fuel in, we'll talk about how they have to stop. But yeah, it should be interesting to see. Of course, as all the different cars, regardless of what class they're in, do different lap times. So we'll see them all potentially brought closer together when they serve that minimum pit stop time. We'll see exactly how close it is when the checkered flag drops after 57 laps, approximately 3 hours. So let's get going for round number 1 of Open Endurance Cup 5.
Yep, the race director, Thilo Falkenberg, who is joining us in the commentary box, and we may drop us a word later in the series. He's currently gridding up the server, and we will be getting underway in just a few moments. For those of you who aren't aware, this series will be running a dummy grid, a rolling start, very short on AS5R. It's just after the last corner, Jack, so the cars will run down in two abreast style down
Yep.
to start finish, and then the pole sitter will set the pace, and when the green flag is called, that car will bolt off and the race will begin for 3 hours.
Yeah. So obviously, both classes are separated. I think there is a separate green flag for each class. So drivers in each class, respectively, have got to be careful not to go a bit early when it's not their green flag. But we'll see exactly what happens. So we'll see drivers obviously warming the tyres up on this long tracks. We'll see how far they can get around before they can really start pushing. You know, you don't want to go in too hot too early, and yeah, especially with the huge curves that we've got in turn number one, the NGTR class, with it being such a narrow car and a short wheelbase, regardless of whether it's the UFR or XFR, and the fact that it is a race car and it's a lot stiffer than a road car. If you take to those curves, you know you're gonna have a bad time. So we'll see how everybody gets through turn number one. At least we might see some cars on their roofs, which is of course, unfortunately, a disaster. We will. Well, I mean, we always want to see drama, but we want to see clean racing too. So, yeah, it'll be fun. I can't wait, honestly.
Well, you'll have to wait because the race hasn't started yet.
Start it now.
So yeah,
I'm pressing the green flag button. It's not doing anything.
We're nearly done. Yeah, this is a long track, so I should mention to the viewers that there's potentially not going to be much close pack racing, but the intriguing thing about the Open Endurance Cup is the long-term strategy. Obviously, with the balance of performance not balancing the cars on track, they'll be balanced through a mandated pit stop time, and that throws all sorts of interesting options out there. So we'll be more specific about those at some point.
Yeah, so just the difference between the LX6 minimum pit stop time and the RAC, for example, is well, the LX6's minimum pit stop time is 130 seconds that has to be served in the pits at some point in the race. Whether you stop once or twice or three times, you have to make sure that you're in the pit lane stationary for at least 130 seconds. Whereas the RAC is 41 seconds. So, you know, a massive difference there of over, you know, a minute and a half. So we'll see exactly how far the LX6 can pull on the RAC and how close it will be after everybody has, you know, of course, come in and served their minimum pit stop requirement.
We have had a timeout on the server, unfortunately. The number 18 car of Kaike Poropo, Energy Virtual Racing, has timed out. So whether he will be allowed to rejoin at the back of the grid remains to be seen. I assume so. It's a 3-hour race. But yeah, just waiting to see whether he reconnects before we get going with the start. Apologies for the short delay here.
Since number 18 is missing, we're choosing to wait till around 5 past to give him a chance to, you know, recoup his internet connection and attempt to join back and get on the grid before he misses the start, unfortunately. So we're going to cut to a short break. We'll jump back with you very soon for round number 1 of Open Endurance Cup 5. Don't go anywhere. So welcome back to round number 1 of Open Endurance Cup 5. Unfortunately, I don't think Kake Proper managed to get back in. We'll see if he can join whilst the guys are pacing, but we're very close to the start-finish line here. You can see there's not a long run down to turn number 1, so hopefully he can get himself back and on the grid. So, 3 red lights. You can see counting down. Drivers will accelerate up to, I think, 49 miles an hour, around about 50. And this is where we grid up. Rolling start, of course, here. And even though we weren't sure if we'd see some pack racing, these cars are very capable of driving very close to each other, of course. Not hugely aero dependent. No big wings on these cars. They have the ability to basically drive nose to bumper. As you can see, the leader there checking up. Clutching massively. Hard on the revs, trying to fake everybody out as we've got a green flag for the NGTR class, and you can see what a great start we had from Takahashi for Kage Red Suns out in the lead already. Got a couple car lengths on the cars behind, but we're all jostling for position further back. It's doesn't go into one, and there's UFR off on to the left there. Who's
That's the Born to Race teammates.
That's Scattle, yeah. I was going to say the skins look very, very similar. Unfortunately, the two teammates colliding. Scattle able to get out of the gravel and continue on. But
right damage on that car.
Yeah, Takahashi still out in the lead though for P1. He's got Last Lap Motorsports right behind him now. The gap for the lead, at least. Takahashi, it's come down quite a bit. So, right, with a very good turn 1 and 2 now. You can see he's challenging the move already into turn number 4 as we pass the little apex of turn number 3 just prior. You can see he's got the overlap done and pulled a couple car lengths on him in the time it's taken us to get from turn 4 to turn number 5. And obviously drivers will be taking the time through turn number 5 for the first time. 3 hours of racing and tyres are absolutely stone cold at the moment, so it might be 3/4 to a full lap in order to get the tyres up to temperature, since we had such a short rolling start. Not much tyre warming you can get done in a couple hundred metres, but we sweep round turn number 9 for the first time. Ripe still out in the lead for Last Lap Motorsports. The Kage Red Suns dropping down into P number 2. Kake Proper did jump back then, but timed out unfortunately just after he left the pit, so disaster for the Energy Virtual Racing driver number 18. Unfortunately, I think unless he gets back very soon, he's going to be a lap down, and he's probably not going to want to race then, unfortunately.
Concept Racing Eisbar, a name we haven't seen for a long time in Lrf Speed, is up to P3 on his return, which is great. Let's see how far he can pull himself through the field. We've got a battle on for P number 6, Jack.
Yeah, so looking back, the side by side are the 2 XFRs, but 2 don't go into 1, and they're very, very close on the brakes. You can see the orange XFR there, the number 88 machine.
I don't know. Did these guys get the memo that this is a 3-hour race? There's a lot of tight battles happening on lap 1. We've also got some damage. Is that MRC Michael? Sorry, not driving for what's that team, Jack?
It's Free Candy Racing.
Free Candy Racing, right,
FCR.
good. Front right damage and rear left damage on the splitter and fender at the back. So I wonder if that car's either rolled or has it been over a curb or what's gone on there?
I'm not sure, yeah, you can definitely see the damage. Hopefully that doesn't hinder him too much throughout the race. Obviously he's had a bit of a lap to kind of assess it, and we'll see if he goes into the pits this time around. Luckily the fact that the shock damage is on the rear left, because I mean from the graphic that I can see, never mind. Well, let's look to the front for now as the leaders are jostling for position. You can see just how close they are. We're only on lap 1, boys. Come on, we've not crossed the start finish line yet. Through to turn number 1 now, crossing the start finish line of 3 minute 46 dead for your current race leader on the right, Kage Red Suns. You can see how much later he brakes, how much more confident he was, but just to the fact that he was further over to the right, he could take the chicane of turn number 1 a lot straighter just from the angle that he approached it. But it's not over yet. You can see P number 2 fighting for position as well, potentially, yeah, going around the outside. You can see Ripe cuts to the middle, but meanwhile just behind we've got a jostle for well, I mean, it's going to be the battle for the lead in a minute when these two catch up to the leading pair. So Inferno for, I think that's Cruise God, he drives for number 75 on the left of the 2, just in the back of shot. He's challenging for 3rd position.
I do believe in the pre-show I said that we weren't going to expect as much close racing on track, but I stand corrected. The opening couple of laps have been quite good so far, as Eisbar runs very wide and kind of drops out of the slipstream of Inferno a little bit there. But it's all go at the front.
I'm hoping that these guys don't spread out too much, because it's going to make my life a lot more fun when there's cars side by side for me to commentate. Oh, you can see Inferno just caught the rear left on the grass coming through the sweeping turn number 7. He was very lucky to catch it. Of course, this being a front engine, front wheel drive car, all the weight's on the front. It's quite easy to catch once the rear end gives
just
way.
Smash the throttle.
You've got, of course, double wishbone suspension on the front, but you've got B-Max on the back, a traditional hatchback configuration. So it's like a Fiesta on steroids, or a Mini Cooper with you know, a couple hundred brake horsepower. Very fun to drive, you know. And with slick tyres and these wide arches, you know, the track's a lot wider than it would be on the standard UF1. Still a standard H-pattern gearbox though in these cars, so drivers, I mean, especially through the slower sections, you'll see whether they flat shift or not. Obviously, I think you can get away with it. The clutch temperature is calculated in LFS, but of course comes down over time like it would in real life. A big lock up there from P number 3, manages to get it slowed down and turned into turn number 12 and 13, and he's caught up to the back of Ripe in P number 2. Meanwhile, Akagi Red Suns are getting away at the front of number 1 machine, put it on pole. Was leading for the initial stage of the race, however Ripe did challenge for the lead and held it for a little while. Ripe now falling back into the clutches of P number 3.
Just an
Inferno
update.
side by side, through turn number 16 as we run up to what we'd call Parabolica, but we're taking it the different way round. We're in reverse, of course, Aston Grand Prix this time. You've got to be very close running too wide there, because any door banging or contact could force the other driver out onto that gravel, and once you get onto that gravel, especially with the slick tyres and the fact that this car weighs nothing, you are basically a passenger. So yeah, as we run down the start finish straight, not many people are close together, so I think we've got time to chat. Pete, what were you going to say? Sorry about that.
No, it's okay. The action was all go at the front. I just wanted to update you that we've got, well, Kake Proper is in the race, which is good. He's down in P18 at the moment, and he'll be able to get something done from there, especially considering the 2 LRFs are ahead of him. Someone who's had a bit of trouble is Iltrida. He is P17 behind both Laszlo Kovac and Number, who are both driving in the Lrf Class. So
I'm glad to see. Glad to see that Kaike's back on track. He's not a complete lap down, however, he is probably about 2/3 of a lap behind the rest of the field. Kaike down in 18th position currently on his second lap, just going through turn number 11. Meanwhile, the leaders have just started lap number 3. Of course, we're going through turn number 4 now, so yeah, like 2/3 of a lap. Kaike's got to catch the rest of the field. So I mean, I think it's definitely possible in 3 hours. Kaike is a very capable driver. Let's run on board with number 42 machine. Ice Bet. See, he's looking round the outside through turn number 5, but it's a very, very long, fast corner, and you can take it flat out on the apex, so you don't really benefit much from running the wide line through turn number 5. But you can just see he's starting to close up. Yeah, I've just noticed that too. You can see him rejoining second positions, catching right up to the back, and we might see a challenge into turn number 9 here. What's going to happen? Takahashi. I mean, you can see sideways the rear all over the place there. What's going to happen into turn number 10? It's all about the exit now on the run down to turn number 11, and watch the drivers where the line goes. You can see there's a bit of astroturf just on the other side of the curb, and the drivers want to use all of the available tarmac and grip that they have. And Inferno carrying a bit more speed through the apex of turn number 11, even though he had to check up as to not run into the back of Takahashi. You can see if you can carry the speed down the straight, there's a little kink to the right and then a slightly bigger kink to the left. He might have the overlap done for the braking zone, but still, if Takahashi remains on the right for the braking zone, he's going to have the inside line. But Inferno manages to brake just that bit later. He can resume his normal line around the front of the number 1 machine and take first position for now. Of course, we're only on lap 3 of 57. We've got 3 hours of racing today, and I'm telling you, if this is going to be the 3 hours, then this is going to be one of my favourite races. So let's keep it up, guys. Look how close the leading pack are. We've still got a small pack of 2, and then it's really only about a second back to 4th from the lead.
So we've got a battle on between 2 XFRs, not the leading XFRs, but this is Cozzy and Paul Duffin. Paul Dolphin driving the orange and black launch racing car, and Cozzy driving the white and blue car on your screen. Seems to be neutralised, Jack. What's going on at the front?
Sorry, I looked at the back towards the battle at the back, but no. Meanwhile, at the front, the leaders are separated by 0.03 at the line. They're still side by side on the braking zone. Look how close they come, almost rubbing into turn number 1. But Inferno with the amazing second apex speed there for turn number 1. As you can see how much faster he was on exit. Almost had to check up as to not run into the back of the Akagi Red Sun's car in P number 1. So Inferno was in the lead around the final corner. Of course, he made the move turn number 12 last time around, but finds himself again in second position as we around turn number 4 he sends it up the inside. How can he keep ahead at this rate? They're all just trading positions. You can see they're just like using each other to drive away from the pair behind, and at the back end of the car shifting around as the weight changes to the front as they downshift into 4th. Obviously with that traditional H pattern gearbox, you've got, you know, double clutch, whatever you want to call it, heel and toe. I sound like I've never driven in my life.
So yeah, it's quite difficult to differentiate these two cars apart, isn't it, Jack? Because they're outside of OEC. Both of these teams drive for the same team, Last Lap Motorsports. That's why their skins are quite similar. And yeah, it's going to be a little bit tricky for the viewers maybe to know who is who. So we'll try and do our best to keep you updated with that. Inferno driving the car in the lead currently. I think the only differentiator really is the bonnet and the rear bumper, from what I can see. Inferno drops back to P number 2 now. It's just a never-ending swapping of positions right now, as Eyre for Concept Racing is knocking on the door of the number 2 slot now. We'll ride on board with him. Ride on board with Eyre. We roll it in out of the last corner. And he does have the slipstream. The leading two have separated themselves a little bit. Now Eyre really is looking over the back of Inferno now. Maybe Inferno's pushed his tyres a little bit too much in this early stage. Maybe Jack can give us some info on the state of Inferno's tyres.
He went a bit deep into turn number 1 and attacked the curb, but his tyres look pretty healthy. Not a lot of temperature in the left, of course. Front right is pretty warm, but they look relatively okay. I noticed that down the straight, at least, they chose not to tuck into each other's slipstream. They were all kind of spread out, even though I think it was around 3.5 tenths that separated each car.
We're watching Born to Race Twin Cam, who is under pressure from one of the Duffins. It's Matthew Duffin. There's also there was a battle going behind between one of the UFRs and XFRs. I think it was Scatland and Scorpio going at it. B2R Twin Cam taking a very wide line. He's got huge damage on that car actually. What's the sit rep there, Jack? Is it left side damage on Twin Cam's car?
Mechanical, at least. There's a slight lower control arm damage for that XFR, but I think apart from the track being adjusted, the suspension is alive and I think the rest's cosmetic. He's going to struggle with that rear left. I think it's been pushed in quite a little bit, so he's going to struggle in the right-handers.
I'll tell you what this was. This was the collision they had at the beginning, wasn't it?
Oh yeah, of course. The Born to Race.
Look at the UFR behind.
XFR and UFR.
It's got mirrored damage.
Scattle's done incredibly well to catch up. Of course, the UFR, I think, at least in terms of raw pace, is quite a bit faster than the XFR over an entire lap, but pretty long lap here, of course.
Yeah, while the leaders were scrapping, Eyre has managed to pick up the fastest lap.
Yeah, so even though Takahashi owns all the purple splits, so sector 1, 2 and 3, they were all set on separate laps. So unfortunately, yeah, like you said, Eyre holding the fastest lap at the moment, just over 3 tenths faster than P1 at the moment last time around.
We've got 3 cars really close together now. Matthew Duffin leading this little trio with the 2 B2R cars stuck behind him currently. As we head into the reverse direction parabolica.
This is where the driver's got to be very careful if they're going to run side by side, because like I said earlier, any contact or door banging can be a bit amplified, of course, when you race online. There's the car behind the Born to Race very wide out and clouts the barriers. The Born to Race UFR, Scattle I think that is, backwards at the moment. You can see just how much control he doesn't have with them slicks on the grass at the moment. Luckily he's able to keep going, but I think he's going to want to pit. He's got quite significant front right damage after collecting that barrier, and I couldn't tell if it was just the aero drop or whether maybe he just took a bit too much liberties with the loud pedalers. We've got a battle for 10th position again. The Born to Race teammate up ahead now.
Yeah, Twin Cam managed to get around Matthew Duffin into turn number 1 there on the brakes, and I would say that Scattle, it's 6 laps, and it seems like he's pushing a little bit too hard. It's a 3-hour endurance race, and anyone who does endurance racing on a regular basis will know that it's not about, you know, your ultimate pace. It's about doing consistent laps, and yeah, needs to settle into a rhythm. I think get the car repaired, settle down, and start putting some times on the board rather than paint on the walls.
Plenty of time still remaining. Of course, we're only on lap 6 of 57 at the moment. The fastest lap at the moment set by your race leader. Last time around, I think the only driver into the 3-minute 2s in the race, at least. So your order is as follows at the moment in P number 1. The number 1 who put it on pole, Takahashi, for Akagi Red Suns, out in the lead, being chased down at the moment by Inferno. They're both entering the turn number 12 and 13 now, the slowest corners on the track. Number 3 is Eyre for Concept Racing. He's managed to get his way up into the podium positions, and just he luckily sits 2.3 seconds away from the lead at the moment. So even though they have spread out ever so slightly, you know, one mistake, the leader's battling, he'll catch straight back up.
Yeah, I think while those two were scrapping, Jack, Eyre was able to catch up, but yeah, those two have got it together. Sorry, continue.
Yeah, no, it's alright. So Ripe is in P number 4 for Last Lap Motorsports. He finds himself only a position down from where he qualified in 3rd position earlier on. He's currently trailing Eyre by, I think, just over a second, so we'll see if he can keep his pace up and try and keep the gap down. I want to see as close racing as we saw at the start of the race there. The gap between Ripe and Eyre is 1.96 seconds at the line. Want to watch him through turn number 1. You can see just how surgical he is with the position of his cars, hitting those curbs nicely, using all of the exit on the outside of turn number 1. Yeah, we move back to P number 5 though. But Launch Racing, it's Dolphin number 24 currently.
That's David
Couple
Dolphin.
seconds back from the number 4, but the highest runner of the XFR so far in the race, so we might see his car come into play during the pit stops. Then again, the UFR only has to stop for 3 more seconds than the UFR. 3 less seconds, sorry, than the UFR. So the cars, well, at least the 4 cars out in the lead, will have to stop for an extra 3 seconds during the start. But I mean, with 7 laps gone and 50 remaining, it's going to need a bit more than 3 seconds to claw some time back from the faster cars. In P number 6, we've got Cozzy, the number 7 machine. I'm trying to find out where he qualified.
Around about there, I think. P number 6.
Was his name Climbs just before?
Oh no, his teammate qualified the car.
Ah, so his teammate Climbs did qualify the car, so it's the Google Hops Racing team. They were P4, so only a couple of positions down, but you can, I mean, to be fair, that's to be expected with the couple of UFRs behind him. Disappointing to see Kake Propo, unfortunately, out of this race. The only retirement at the moment. He was P5 in qualifying, so he'd have been up there in the mix somewhere in the UFR as well. Very talented driver for Energy Virtual Racing.
Did we lose Iltrada as well?
I think we might have done. The last car on track at the moment is P16. Scattle will move down the order. Paul Dolphin, number 88, in 7th position now. Again, just a few seconds down the road from Cozzy and his fellow XFR. He's doing pretty well. Nice and consistent lap times from Paul for Launch Racing. Then we've got Michael, FCR, Free Candy Racing. You can see his skin sponsored by Skittles.
I think quite a lot of the drivers in this series have just tried to throw us off by inventing team names, especially for this series. Michael is among them.
I think he's brilliant. I love it. I love the Comic Sans.
What does it say on the back?
It says sponsored by Skittles.
Oh, okay,
on the back.
well, probably, yeah. This broadcast is in no way sponsored by Skittles. Anyway.
I wish.
Oh, yes. Taste the rainbow.
But where did Michael qualify? Whereabouts was he? Free Candy Racing. He was P11, so he's up to 8th. So, I mean, a great race for him so far. He finds himself up a couple of positions since the start. He's got 10 seconds over the number 17 machine in 9th position for Launch Racing.
Still intrigued as to where Michael picked up that damage, but yeah.
Yeah, maybe we can chat to him after the race and see where he picked it up, if he even knows he's got it. I'm sure everything was pretty close, of course, at the start of the race.
I'm sure he knows what's going on there.
And then further down, we've got Matthew Duffin. Again, following his teammate for Launch Racing. I like the blue that they're using on this car. Very similar to the blue that Sam's running, my teammate, in the SMRC thing on his Porsche. I love that blue. What would you call that blue? Because to me, that's ultra blue.
Yeah, I think
it's a bit light for an electric blue.
The roof is ultra blue. Let's go with that.
As we've lost a B2R driver, that's Twin Camp.
That is not good. 8 laps
That is
in.
not good, because he was the higher of the 2 B2R drivers. Born to Race scattled down. I think he will be inherit 15th position now after his teammate unfortunately disconnected, but not great to see. We were just about to come to him on the run down the order, but you can see Scorpio and number 33 in P number 11 currently driving for a Pocket Lugan team in the XFR. He qualified in well, no, Alberto qualified the car for them, P12, and they're up to 11th, so they would have been where they were, but we've lost Kaike Propo from a bit further up the grid, and we'll see what they can do later on, of course. Potential driver swap on the cards, since Alberto was the one to qualify the car. And we've got Mr. Fetch in P number 12. They qualified 15th position, so up 3 positions, good for them.
Yeah, that's the Gum Garage team, French outfit.
As we look back to, I mean, at least the only 2 cars in the Lrf class at the moment. So we've got Lacko in the LX6.
Yeah,
now, the LX6, incredibly fun car to drive.
One of his favourite cars in the game, I believe.
It's just so tail happy. It's just incredibly fun to drive, and the manual gearbox. The fact that a lot of the weight's at the front because of the engine. You know, there's not much bodywork at the back either, and no rear wing to push you down. It's incredibly fun.
Yeah, his teammate Toga qualified the car, I think, and yeah.
Yes, they were P17 in qualifying, so they're up quite a few places to be running 13th at the moment. Of course, it doesn't matter, they're racing against the other Lrf cars, which there is only the one other in that class at the moment, the RAC, that we'll get to shortly. So they're not racing anybody else for position, but we'll see how close the 2 in the Lrf class are after, a pit stop or 2. We'll see if the gap gets brought down. Meanwhile, I think Scattle's just got back past Bagmaster's number at the moment. Of course, Scattle recovering from that damage that he picked up. One with the collision with his teammate into turn number 1, and then we saw that unfortunate incident where he ran wide out of the final corner, turn number 17, and clattered the barrier quite hard. I think he must have gone immediately into the pits. I would have done exactly the same, to be fair, because even though if you can drive with the damage, you probably want to, because of course it's faster than pitting and being stationary and having to rejoin and get back up to temperature and up to scratch and stuff. If he chose to stay out and size the damage up over the length of a lap, that's a very long time to be in a car that's potentially undrivable, and when he had the damage, which is just on the outside of the corner that we're going through now, turn number 17, you don't really have any corners at all to really size the car up before the pit lane entry appears. Just after the second Michelin bridge here, you'll see the pit lane just off to the right, the cone start. You can see that orange line that he's just gone past. That's a pit entry line. So he had from the outside of turn number 17 to there to decide whether he wanted to pit. And he thought better to be safe than sorry, because if he's got a broken car, you don't want to do what would be a 3 minute and 5 roughly lap time with a broken car. You could add a minute to that, of course. If you've got a lot of front right damage, all that weight's going to be on the front right during all the left-handers. And since we're running a reverse configuration here at Aston Grand Prix,
yep,
very easy to load the car up and lose plenty of time, because all that damage is concentrated on one side. But we've not forgot you, number 22, Fragmaster's number, down in 15th, but P2 in class in that RAC. I'm going to find out the gap between him and Lacko, because we were talking about the minimum pit stop times for this class. At least the RAC only has to stop for 41 seconds over the duration of this race. Whether you stop once or twice or 3 times, you just have to make sure you're stationary for 41 seconds at least. The LX6 meanwhile is just over 3 times that at 130 seconds. So you can see just how far Lacko is in front. He's 24.3 seconds in front of number at this point.
Yeah,
and we're on lap 9 of 57. It's going to get closer, but we'll see.
Just a word on that. So yeah, we did mention that this is a long game, the OEC. The cars are not balanced by any intake or weight restrictors. It's all done on the pit stop time, and therefore the pit stop plays a huge role in the racing action.
Yeah, so traditionally, like, for example, if you've ever seen the UFR and XFR on track, or like for example in the GT2 challenge that we had on sim broadcasts earlier this year, the cars are, like Pete said, restricted by voluntary intake restriction, which is basically just you're restricting the amount of air that can go through the inlet manifold, and how much power that car can make is then restricted to make the playing field as level as possible, so that the cars can all race on track together and it be as close as possible. Whereas here cars are just completely unrestricted. You'll see the gaps go up massively during the race, but then when them crucial pit stops come into play, you'll see the field leveled out, hopefully as much as possible. I'm curious to see how close it will be at the line. Of course, mandatory pit stop times can't take into account driver's skill, as we're seeing exactly that in a battle for 5th position now. See the two XFRs, because he's chasing down David Dolphin at the moment for P number 5 as they load the car up through turn number 11 and onto this long straight. And the XFR, even though it is the slower round of the lap, it is faster on the straights than the UFR, the faster car in the class at the moment. And with the added draft from right, you can see just how easy Cozzy makes it to close up to the back, and has the overlap done almost. But there is contact between the two, and that's a unfortunate pit maneuver coming together in the braking zone now. Cozzy's going to lose out a bit more trying to get that car back on the road. You can see struggling for traction, revs on, slick tyres on grass don't go together.
Yeah, and that dirt
it's a shame that
pulled him through.
It has indeed, and it's a shame that happened. They were so close together in the braking zone, but I don't think Cozzy came across, and I don't think David deliberately went into the back of him, but both braking at different points. And I think if David had left his brakes off, he would have been able to avoid Cozzy, but he would have either hit the wall or, you know, gone shot straight over the curb. But it's a shame to see that Cozzy got span out of that. Hopefully he can bounce back. We'll see exactly what his lap times are when we get around the lap next time around, and we'll see if he can still keep his pace, but hopefully this doesn't bother him too much.
Yeah, that won't have left any lasting damage, definitely.
Yeah, so apart from you know, his tyres being a bit dirty at the time when he's trying to get off the grass, he's basically free to go. But I mean, the mental game's a big thing in motorsport, you know.
Yeah, look at Michael now, he'll be making full use of that. Cozzy will be a bit, potentially a bit hot-headed maybe, I don't know, or maybe he'll be calm and cool and like, oh well.
Yeah, so I mean, you can drive angry, but
there's a battle for the lead going on.
Oh, is it? Up at the front, let's have a look.
Yeah, they're
the two
really
UFRs
close again.
At the front, both almost mirroring each other's lap times for the last few laps. We saw Inferno for Akagi Red Sun's get away just a little bit, but sorry, Inferno for is it Cruise God, and Takahashi was for Akagi Red Sun's out in the lead, but he's dropped to P2 now, so there has been a change for position somewhere, I think. But the gap at the line, 0.25, very close.
Yeah, 11 laps gone. On the 11th lap, sorry, 10 laps gone.
So, should we, do you want to run on board with Takahashi? We'll see exactly.
We're on board with Takahashi right now.
Oh wait, of course we are. Stop looking at the stream and looking at my own screen, hoping that would change. But no, you can see just how, I mean, just keep an eye on the way the weight changes when the drivers brake in a straight line and go down the gears. You know, it's very light on the rear, of course, being front-engined and front-wheel drive. You're almost opposite. Like, I mean, the rear tries to overtake the front at times because all the weight's towards the front. The rear goes incredibly light. Very fun car to drive, but it's very different.
It is.
I remember, of course, in iRacing, me and you at least, Pete, trying to get used to that TCR car. Very similar style car to this. Obviously, it's not got a beam axle at the back, but you know, it's a handful. Even, I mean, it's the brakes really that make the biggest difference on that car. Apart from trying not to drive in a straight line when you're coming out the corners with that throttle pedal, you've got to be very careful because you'll lock the diff and spin the fronts up, and you just go straight on.
Yeah, I mean the similar characteristics. I suppose they're very different cars, but
they're the same kind of formula, but pulled off in a different way. But the driving style is well, at least the way I see it, it's quite similar.
Yeah, you can still use the brakes to get the UFR turned in if the setup's dialed in right. The TCR car has that more. It's more an inherent car characteristic than I'd say the UFR is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, of course, I mean the
TCR.
Yeah, the TCR. I mean the setup restrictions are just because the car's on iRacing. You know, there's a limit to how high you can make the springs, how soft or how hard you can make the rebound and things like that. Whereas in LFS, I mean, you can change everything.
Yep.
You can't adjust the differential really on the TCR in iRacing, I don't think. Not to the extent that you can on
here. That's the great thing
here.
about having fictional cars. You don't have any licensing problems.
Yeah. I mean, all cars again on LFS, you can adjust all of the gear ratios no matter what. So that the customizability that you can really hone your setup in. And if you find the sweet spot, you're gonna be grinning from ear to ear, because not only is it gonna be fast, it's gonna be incredibly fun to drive too. We're seeing Inferno for Cruise Gods. I mean, the gap's coming up just a little bit to Kagi Red Sun's in P2 at the moment, but I mean, after 12 laps, plenty of racing's gone on so far. I'm surprised that these two are so close together on track at the moment. But I'm just looking at Takahashi behind the wheel of this number 1 machine at the moment. The gap looked a little bit more than it was at the split, because Takahashi was just able to carry so much more speed through turn number 5. He took quite a late apex, but because he was so wide in, it was so much faster.
Yeah, Eyere's fallen into a little bit of a gap now. He was up with those two at the start of the race while they were squabbling, and it looked like he might be having a go to overtake. But he's settled into a rhythm. He's running around in P3 in the number 42 Concept Racing car, and right behind him. I wonder if Ripe is catching up. Sorry, Joe.
Yeah, no, I wonder if Eye're is pushing, because he's just actually set a personal best split 1 time at the moment. So it's split 1 this time around for him, at least, personal best of 52.58 seconds. Meanwhile, your leaders, they're doing 52.1 at least. So you know, there's almost half a second in sector 1 there, and the leaders, that wasn't even a personal best. The actual fastest split 1 time was a 51.99. So Eye're, I mean, really the only time he's got to find is in sector 1. So whether that's turn number 1, whether he's being cautious, whether he's being cautious to get to the end. You know, consistency is key, of course. The more risks you take.
Side by side now, Cozzy and Paul Dolphin, the battle for 6th place. And it looks like Cozzy's going to get past the almost a repeat of the same incident, but with a different launch racing car. Cozzy tightened his line quite a bit, and yeah, he was well within his rights to shut the door there, but it caught Paul a little bit off guard. Might want to reconsider doing that potentially. That was scary.
Yeah, I wonder how close they're going to be into turn number 17 now. So of course these cars aren't hugely affected by aero drop, but there's a slight little rear wing on the boot of those cars to keep the rear in check during the, you know, high speed corners.
It's more of a gurney flap than a wing, really, isn't it? It's quite small. I don't know if it's providing any stability on a front wheel drive car, but I guess.
No, you'd be surprised. It's incredibly important to keep the rear in check.
Yeah, true.
On a front wheel drive car. I remember I used to think the same, but someone tagged me in a video on social media, and I think it was a Mugen Civic racing around Tsukuba, and the difference that wing made at 120 mile an hour was night and day, more than I would have expected. Of course, you don't have the power on the rear, there's not much weight, but you know, you need that stability, and of course the wings on the XFR's a lot smaller than the one I've seen in the example I'm talking about, but no, still important. I think there would be definitely at least a noticeable difference. So if you were to drive it with and without, you'd definitely want to choose the one with. But looking towards the front now, since the battle for 6th position starting to spread out, Takahashi, even though the Cruise God car in P number 2, the number 75 machine, as we're coming round to lap the Lrf car in the RAC for Fragmaster's numbers, driving that number 22 P2 in class at the moment.
Yeah, the only real car in this race.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, the RAC, an actual car. But yeah, no, as I was saying, Takahashi out in P1 at the moment. Even though you can see Inferno is closing up to him, Takahashi last time around, fastest lap of the race, a 3-minute 1.96, and P2 was a 3-minute 2.58. So the gap, at least last lap, was, I think, at least, well, they were 0.6 of a second faster, and he had the lead to begin with, I think. So yeah, Inferno is either doing something insane this lap, or Takahashi's not having the greatest lap, because I mean the difference in lap time last time around is more than the gap on track right now. So Inferno definitely responding to the pace of the leader.
Pushes quite wide, gets on the grass, and has to keep the car in check. That's going to cost him some time.
Yeah, luckily the curb was there to break the grass up a bit. He kept his foot in, didn't lose too much. You can see he's dropped back by a couple of tenths, you know, 5 or 6 car lengths.
They're
but
drafting
look how
each other or
tight.
something.
Yeah, I'm not sure if they're working together. I just
yeah.
noticed how wide Takahashi was there through turn number 16, and he's right up to the back of him again. So yeah, again, very similar skins, 2 separate teams, 2 separate drivers, working together potentially to try and get away from the rest of the field. Now, will he fight the move? Because they're not drafting each other, not as much as I would be if I was trying to get past. Very close there. I think I saw a flash of the brake lights then from P number 1 as he wants to get tucked back into that slipstream. There's still time once you get past to attack back, as we can see. Look, they're still side by side now. It's turn number 1. Who's going to be later on the brakes? Of course, I'd rather be the car on the right because you are making that chicane a bit straighter, but you can see how much curb Inferno took there. The second curb, the one on the left there, massive 2 wheels, and when it landed, car still a bit unsteady, and you could see he ran slightly wide, but manages to get the position back through. Well, sorry, manages to not lose the position up to turn number 2, and you can see they're only going to get closer now towards the apex of turn number 4. But keep an eye on the different lines. Watch. I wonder if they follow each other this time around through turn number 5. Takahashi last time around swung so much more out to the left, but was able to carry so much more speed, and they almost overlap, but unfortunately Takahashi parked it on the apex this time. So they are definitely interchanging lines.
Yeah,
I think the outside
together.
line is the faster of the 2, but again, yeah, like you said, Pete, I think they are working together in order to just, you know, overlap at the right moment, be as fast as they possibly can with the aid of the other person.
Yeah, compare it to old school
away.
oval racing.
Shake and bake.
Exchanging draft, and oh, that's not gone well. Inferno on the grass there a little bit.
And we'll see how long it takes him to catch back up to the back of the number 1 machine out in the front at the moment. The leader of this race, 14 laps gone out of 57. And these two, again, trading times all over the place. No purple sectors have been set in the last couple of laps, but just to run you down at least, Takahashi holds the fastest lap, a 3-minute 1.96. He also holds the fastest split number 1, but Inferno has purple split 2 and 3 set earlier in the race. And I wonder if these guys can get close to that maybe as the fuel comes out. I wonder how the tyres last on the UFR. It's not necessarily a car I'm 100% familiar with in Lrf Speed. But again, after 14 laps, 3-minute 4, 3-minute 5 a lap time for these guys. Average, of course. 0.25 separates them. So
yeah, I mean, it's
very
working.
Close.
They're using the draft to pull away from Eyre. I wonder how much of an effect it is having on ultimate pace, though. That technique. I'm sure it's having some effect.
It is, yeah, because obviously you've got to, you know, run wide in certain corners. If the driver behind you's got, you know, the overlap, you're going to sacrifice a bit to get him in front. But again, you can probably get that time you lost back and some more just from the draft.
Inferno lifting now. Very odd strategy playing itself out here. It's possible that they're just, he's waiting for the right time to go past, isn't he? So he's not giving Takahashi.
Yeah, I wonder if it's potentially a fuel saving manoeuvre as well, of course.
Inferno cuts the corner pretty much. That won't have helped his suspension any, and yeah. Are they working together? This is a very bizarre scenario that's playing itself out here.
It's a very synchronized dance, and they're giving each other plenty of room, but again, the only thing that really these two cars, well, what makes them similar is the fact that they've got similar skins. You know, they're all separate teams, completely separate entries, separate drivers, and I'm sure it's going to get heated towards the end. If they're this close towards the end, I don't think they're going to be doing what they're doing right now. I think they're going to be trying to get in front and stay in front, of course. But at the moment, what they're doing is absolutely working. Again, the gap, 0.28 at the split, but the gap back down to P number 3, number 42. Ice Bear, 6.36 seconds. So, yeah, they're considerably faster at the moment. Consistently, at least. Anyway, Ice Bear, last time around, matched these guys' time, where it actually was a little bit faster. But the gap remains at about 6.3 seconds. So, for the last 3 or 4 laps, Ice Bear's been falling back ever so slightly, but he did respond last time around. So whether that warrants, you know, something to look at. Also, Ripe last time around with his personal best lap, a 3-minute 2.73. The leaders last time a 3-minute 4. So yeah, I wonder what Ripe's doing from P number 4 at the moment. Yeah, he was absolutely flying last lap. He was the fastest car on track. He's going to be up towards the back of Ice Bear before we know it at the moment. Last lap motorsport, the number 34 car. He is indeed.
How are the tyres coping on these cars, Jack? Because at some point they need to make a pit stop, and that is when we will start to see the effects as we lose another car from the race. Who is that? That's
Scattle. So both born to race cars have joined the spectators, and I mean, I'm going to guess that's them out of the race.
Yeah, I mean, that's just over an hour gone in this 3-hour race, and we've lost 2 born to race cars. Kaike Paroppo, we believe we lost Iltrada, did we? Yes, we did. So 4 cars have dropped out so far. 14 remain. We're watching the cockpit view of Last Lap Motorsports Ripe, currently in P4. Eisbar getting very, very wide there out of into Parabolica. Gets it hooked up on the exit though, and gets a decent exit.
Meanwhile, Takahashi has taken the purple split away from Inferno, so split 2 at least. Your race leader, the fastest of anybody so far, by quite a bit actually. He did a 1-minute 14.97 middle split. Meanwhile, Inferno in P2 a 1-minute 15.47, so exactly half a second as Inferno runs wide out of turn number 1. The gap's increased quite a bit now, but I'm sure they'll end up regrouping, and you know, chat tells me that these two are friends. So I see this as the equivalent of me and you out at the front in a race, Pete. We'd probably be having the same amount of fun as these guys.
Yeah, I wish we were at the front of a race.
Especially in these cars. Brilliant to see.
Yeah, they're just having fun.
I mean, they could follow each other all day, but we wouldn't have much to talk about, so I'm glad that they're doing what they're doing, because it's great to watch.
Agreed. Paul Duffin in the wall, out of the chicane. He must have got the chicane all wrong, and that's going to let Michael Malek swing past. Sorry, my mistake, that's Paul Duffin, not David Duffin. Did I say Paul?
David,
I said Paul.
I think you said Paul, yeah. David's still out in 5th position at the moment, but Paul, unfortunately, down in 7th position now.
Who else have we lost? Cozzy.
Cozzy pitted,
rejoins.
So whether he had a bit of an accident or not, we're not sure, but he's down in 14th position at the moment. Obviously, I think he was, of course, midway round the lap when he pitted, so he's been reset back down.
Yeah,
actually, he's been completely reset. I don't know. Yeah, he might have to have them allocated back, of course, but still, he will lose the lap he was on, of course, when he jumped to the pit lane.
Yep, Ripe's got past, well, he's side by side, sorry, with Eisbear as we head down to the kink in the back straight on Aston Grand Prix reversed. Eisbear holds it round the outside for now, but Ripe is going to have all sorts of slipstream up the back straight.
Yeah, and usually 2 don't go into 1 through turn number 11 here, Aston Grand Prix reversed. But these 2 allowing more than enough room for each other. They must be enjoying it as much as we are watching it. Ripe able to just be a bit later on the brakes, catches a bit of the grass there into the initial part of turn number 12, but I was going to say gets the exit that he needs, but runs ever so slightly wide and collects a bit of that grass, and you can see just how much left lock he had to apply, even though he kept the power down, to just kind of get the car, manhandle it off the grass there, and you know, drive away from turn 12.
Yeah, maybe these 2 can start to work together to close that gap. I'm sure that slipstreaming around here is going to be a faster way round if you can synchronise yourself.
Look how close they are, almost touching, and look how Ice Bear's got to lift out of it, maybe hit an earlier apex than he anticipated, just because of how close they came and how close he came to the grass on his right in the initial part of the corner. Ice Bear will have a little bit of the draft. Like I said, these cars aren't hugely dependent on aero, however, you can imagine following a car as close as these two are will give you a bit of straight line speed if you're the car at the back.
Yeah, I hope these two stick together. I hope Iceberg can kind of use the passing car as motivation to flip a switch maybe. I did mention before that Iceberg is a name we haven't seen for a while in Need for Speed, so maybe he's just brushing off those cobwebs and trying to settle in. It's a long season, 4 rounds, 3 hours each. The last round a little bit longer, maybe 3 hours and 10 minutes we're told. But yeah.
Both on identical tyre compounds, R3, R2. Ice Bear's got a little bit less temperature on the surface and in the carcass of the tyres, so whether that's gonna make a difference to him, of course. The outside of his front left is the darkest blue I've ever seen, but the core temperature it is blue, which is cold, of course. Green is where the optimum temperature is in lift speed, around about. Well, I think it scales with every tyre, but green's what we want to see, at least on the surface of the tyre. Ice Bear needs to get some temperature back into those tyres, maybe, put a bit more lock on than he needs mid-corner. Hopefully he doesn't run wide, but scrub them tyres up in a way to, bring them alive a bit. See if he can get a bit more grip out of the machinery he's working with at the moment. You can see he's dropped back quite a bit to third place right for last lap motorsport. This lap alone, at least, the gap's come up by about a second.
Matthew Duffin was really close to Coupe, the other launch racing car. He's dropped back a bit now. Whether Coupe managed to find a way around him, I can't remember. I think I may have missed it, or it didn't happen, so we'll keep an eye on it. As Coupe gets very sideways, the rear of that car not wanting to stick to the ground anymore. And can Matthew Duffin get a nice run through this fantastic sweeping section on Aston Grand Prix? It works so well in both directions, does this section. It is a work of genius.
Yeah, we've almost got a streak of launch racing cars on the roster with a free candy racing car to split them up. And these two, of course, teammates closing up on each other. Hopefully they can have some fun in this race too. We'll see how close it gets.
All choosing to do solo entries, I should note, I believe, rather than splitting up into teams of two, which is good because it provides us with 2 more cars on the grid. 95 there making quite good use of the grass on the inside of the kink before the back straight.
They've actually had very similar laps so far. The car ahead at the moment, Coupe, at least in split number 1, only a 100th of a second separated them both. And it was actually Matthew Duffin that was the faster of the two through split 2 by around a 1/10 of a second. So at least the net profit for Matthew Duffin in 9th position at the moment on this lap is around a 1/10. So if he can carry his pace, maybe get a bit closer than he is, take a bit more advantage of that draft, of course. The closer you get, the more pronounced the effect is. We'll see him maybe gain a couple Ks down the straight here. It's all about Parabolica though. You can see the RAC just ahead of these two now, exiting turn number 17.
They're going to be side by side.
Duffin incredibly tight on the apex there, almost a textbook driving line. Not able to run as wide as he wanted to on the exit because his teammate's car was there and he was catching up to the point where he needed to check up, but side by side these two run now down the start finish straight to complete lap 17 for them and start lap number 18, and they're going to catch the RAC of Fragmaster's number 22 at the moment. P2 in class, just ahead of these two. But Coupe's to the pits. I just missed that because I'm running on board with Dolphin, but
so this is
over before it was started, really.
First pit stop of the race. First pit stop of the race. Will he serve any of his mandated pit stop time? I am guessing so. So this could be quite a lengthy pit stop. Depends how much of the mandatory pit stop he chooses to serve. Well, the length of the stop.
Yeah, so 22.54 seconds for the number 17 car. His first pit stop of the race, of course. All tyres been changed and he's refueled also as he rejoins now.
Yeah.
So, could this be like, I sound like Crofty here, could this be the undercut?
Well, we don't know until we see. This is the first race with this balance of performance testing in place. Speaking of, the series organiser and race director of the Open Endurance Cup, Thilo Falkenberg, is joining us in the commentary booth. Thilo, are you there? And would you like to talk us through that, the thought process behind using this style of BOP and any other thoughts you have of the race so far?
Good evening there, now properly and not just screaming hi in between the introduction. Yeah, this form of balancing was an idea to provide the pure cars to the classes, especially with the Lrf class and the wide variety of concepts behind those three cars. It is really difficult to balance them fairly with the added weight or the intake restrictions. They essentially would completely kill the character of the cars if you really would apply them to the extent they would actually do what they were intended to.
That's fair.
And so the pit stop times were an idea. They are used in various real-life series, such as the British GT, if I'm correct. And they are an additional way to keep cars in place in those series. Here it is the only purpose for those pit stop times to bring the cars on equal playing field.
Yeah, and maybe explain for the viewers the pit stop times. The pit stops that the drivers make, the times that those services take, are included in the mandatory pit stop time.
Yes, indeed. So for the raceabout, for example, the pit stop time is set to 41 seconds. If you're doing your 2 pit stops, you need to do these 41 seconds are pretty much the time you need to do the service. However, for the FZ5 and the LX6, these times are greater to compensate their speed advantage around this track. And yeah, thanks to the help of a few community members, I was able to use a lot of data from past leaks to process them and to
Yeah, I was
create
going to
the
mention that
numbers.
actually. That was very interesting.
Yeah. That was going to be my question. What kind of process did you go through to kind of get the perfect amount of stationary time in the pits to bring all the cars, at least
Michael,
in terms of
has he got a puncture? Sorry to interrupt.
race distance?
He's got his hazards on and he was going very twitchy.
Yes, he has a puncture.
Michael,
Yeah,
Michael
it's on
rear
rear left puncture. So he could have locked up a few times. His tyres on the front are extremely thin, but you can see just how, at least through that right-hander, the rear left is quite loaded up and just no grip, unfortunately. He needs to get that back on the tarmac.
So yeah, Michael, one of the drivers who we know likes to push his tyres to the limit. He's done it this time, and he's pushed it over the limit. Yeah, if anybody is interested in the process that Thilo went through to create the balance of performance testing, there's a great thread on the LFS forum with all the details and all the graphs and the pretty diagrams. It's quite interesting if you're into that sort of thing.
I assume, of course, Thilo, I'm guessing the minimum pit stop times will change per track, kind of thing, or
yes, definitely.
Awesome.
The experiences we do around round 1 will also be included in the next iteration of the calculations. So each and every lap that's done here today will at least play a small part into the balancing of the next round.
Got Cozzy here in P13. overtaking FFM number 4 position. Remember, they're in different classes. But yeah,
Yeah,
getting a bit
because he
close there.
must have had a little bit of an accident at some point.
Well, because
of
he
course
pitted,
he
didn't he?
jumped to the pits,
Yeah.
so he lost a bit of a lap, at least the lap that he was on when he jumped to the pits. He's currently on lap 18. The leader's on lap 20, so he's a lap down from the leaders. Leaders have crossed the line though since, so Cozzy will be on lap 19 when he rounds the final corner. But yeah, it's been pointed out to me as well that unfortunately the puncture that Michael received, he's still trying to recover that car to the pit lane. He's very close to the pit entry line now, but it's just got 2 rear punctures now, both rear tyres not wanting to play ball, and you can just how close. And this is a very, very fast part of the track. You know, everybody else jumping into the pits. Who else has just jumped in? That was an XFR that shot past. Was that Cozzy?
No, it was PLT Scorpio takes his position in a pit box.
I just saw the darker blue.
There is another car in the pit box. Sorry, there is the
It's
ultra blue car of Matthew Duffin, who is also pulled up, and he leaves now. Yeah, some of the other drivers. So Scorpio, I think, is serving part of his mandatory time. He now moves and hands over to a teammate actually.
Yeah, so the mandatory time for the XFR is 22 seconds. So really, I mean, even earlier, we saw the first stop.
Cuts for exit.
So let's have a look. It was Coop actually for Launch Racing with a 22.54. So he served all his time. Whether that was a couple seconds of waiting or just the service time, not much you have to wait for. 22 seconds is not a long time.
Yeah, thanks for joining us, Thilo. The pit lane exit blend lines are enforced in this series, am I right?
Yes, they are.
Yeah, sorry, so I just pointed out a bit of an infringement there live on stream. Okay, so yeah, a few drivers setting their pit stops. As far as I'm aware, none of the UFRs have yet to do so. A question in the chat, do they have to serve minimum pit time all at once or every pit stop, or can they spread the time over multiple pit stops? The time that they have to serve can be spread over multiple pit stops. The restriction or the balance of performance time for the pit stops is a combined time. They don't have to serve that at each stop that they make.
Yeah, of course, different strategies available for all the drivers. Some, if they can eke the tyres out, might only choose to stop once, in which case they would of course have to serve the entirety of their minimum stop time in that one stop. However, if you want to maybe choose a softer compound, stop a couple more times if you think that it's faster over a race distance, you don't have to serve all the time in either of the 2 stops. You can spread the 2 between the 2 stops. But I mean, even if you did want to stop twice and serve all the time in the first stop, it would be exactly the same in terms of race length. Just a shorter pit stop for the later one.
As you can see on the timing tower on the left of your screen, the launch racing cars are all together now. David Duffin currently leads the way in the number 24. Paul Duffin behind in the number 88. And Coop in the number 17. And Matthew Duffin, who has stopped in the number 55.
I'm just going to have a look. I want to figure out which one.
Has Matthew Duffin been in a wall? Sorry to interrupt.
I'm not
There's
sure.
damage on that car. And it's just been in the pits.
Oh yes, there is indeed. It's on the back of the car as well. So whether that was on his outlap after changing all 4 tyres and refueling, could have been the fact that he's used to having warm tyres, and it could have caught him out. Of course, the rear pretty happy in these cars being as light.
interesting development, Jack. The PLT car is back in pit lane. The number 33 has decided, after I guess 1 lap, to come back in pit lane. I'm assuming that was for a drive-through penalty.
Yep, I think since he had a blend line violation, of course they have to adhere to that orange line on the way out of pits. He must stay within those two all the way until the end. I think he had a drive-through and of course didn't stop during that entrant into the pits. He just completed his drive-through. Rejoins out in 10th position. Now we've got one of the leaders in the pit, so from P2, Takahashi, but Kagi Radson's in the pit lane.
Right,
I think one of the first of the UFRs to jump into the pit lane, closely mirrored.
Yeah,
by,
so
Ice Bear, and who else is that in the pit lane? It's Ripe for Last Lap Motorsports. So 3 of the top 4 in the pit lane at least now. And I'm looking at Ripe right now in game at least, and it wide open throttle, trying to burn all the fuel as it gets put into his car.
yeah,
Huge wheel spin as he.
Takahashi already at the first chicane.
Yeah, so it's a driver swap as well.
Sobis
Right.
takes over that car.
Ripe jumps out, Sobis jumps in to the car in P number 3, and I mean, lighting up the front wheels, great way to get some temperature onto the surface of the tyre at least. Not necessarily great for fastest 0 to 60 time, but obviously cold tyres, fresh tyres, you'll want to scrub them up a bit. You can see I'm using a bit of lock through turn number 2. Because the faster you get the temperature into these tyres, you know, the earlier you can push. But the time you'd lose, obviously, by losing traction and spinning those front tyres or locking the rears up, you know, sliding about, you probably gain by getting on the power a bit earlier in the lap. You'd have to drive potentially a full out lap at about 80% on cold tyres to get the temperature into them normally. Whereas if you go mad for a couple corners, you know, you can just pull the pin, go, sort of thing. So yeah, P3 for Sobis at the moment for Last Lap Motorsport. Hopefully he can get up to speed and settle in and, you know, hit his marks and get going. 22 laps in to 57 laps, 3 hours roughly.
Pre-Candy Racing, Michael has changed his tyres. Not sure whether he served any here. Well,
I'll just check that for you.
Sorry, go on.
Yeah. No, I was going to say, I was just going to check that for you, because are you going to tell me that he didn't fix the damage? Because I still see...
Yeah, no, he didn't fix the damage. I mean, I wouldn't, unless he's got actual mechanical damage.
Well, that's what we were talking about earlier. I got a prod from Chris McElroy. Let me know that, of course, Michael's got quite a bit of rear left shock damage as he just straight lines the chicanes. And you can see that, I mean, at least the way I saw it then, the rear of the car took a little bit longer to stabilise, and he's got quite a bit of rear left shock damage from really early in the race. So we saw the first tyre that he had a puncture with was the rear left. So could that be due to the shock damage? Obviously the rear left strut not behaving in the same way it would if it was completely healthy.
Am I right
chosen
in
not
saying
to fix the damage. We'll see how it affects him on this stint.
Is the rear axle of that car thinner than the front one? Has he really bashed it up, or is that just my eyes deceiving me?
Let me have a look. I think the tracking is slightly out, but I don't think the actual track is any narrower. So I don't think that I don't think the rear left's been pushed into it. However, there is quite a bit of cosmetic arch damage around the side. So I wouldn't be surprised if it is moved in quite a bit.
I think it is. I don't think my eyes are lying to me. I think that rear left has been forced inbound a little bit, inboard a little bit, and that must be a nightmare to drive for Michael Malik there.
So Chris, again in my ear, unfortunately you can't hear him on stream, just feeding me the information that I need to know. Looking from the top down view at least, he says it is noticeably pushed in by 2 or 3 inches, so he will be feeling that at least. So, or not, because I mean a couple inches is not a lot. So
In the XFR,
Well,
it does
because of
make
course,
a
if he
big
was
difference.
conscious of that and knew the damage was there, surely he would fix it. But if
He
he thinks he
must
can
just,
drive
yeah.
around it, he
Yeah.
will do so and has done so far. But
Mr.
that
Fetch in the
puncture,
pits.
that puncture again, potentially caused by the damage. And since it's still on the car, we'll see how he gets on.
Yeah, Mr. Fetch down in 11th place in the NGT class, makes his pit stop and is overtaken by Cozzy, who will not stop for a while because he rejoined the race after spectating, so he at least gains a place in class for now. But when he stops, we'll see if he drops behind Mr. Fetch again. Depends how his stint is.
Yeah, so I'm curious what happened to Cozzy there, because we checked a couple laps ago. I think he was on lap 18 and the leaders were a couple laps ahead. I don't know if Cozzy's been, maybe when he rejoined the track, awarded 1 lap less than he was entitled to, because I don't think he lost too much, and he was 2 laps down, or sorry, a full lap and wherever he was on track down from the leaders, whereas at the moment at least.
Maybe Thilo can give us some insight.
Although actually no, I think that's just because the PLT car had the drive-through and their pit stop too, so they're a lap down from the leaders. However, they are just about to cross the line onto 23. So yeah, Cozzy, I think, was of course given the correct amount of laps. He is a lap down on the leaders, because Cozzy is on lap 22 and your race leader Inferno for is it Cruise God at the moment. He's about to start lap 24 as he comes into the pits, actually. So you can see he committed to the right side of the track in plenty of time as to not cross those yellow lines. Got to be careful to slow the car down correctly. Chooses the first pit box you can see on his right. Obviously, it's a lot harder than you think to slow a car like that down. No ABS.
Yeah.
And used tyres, you know, is a recipe for disaster, especially when you come into something as crucial as the pit speed limiter line. Of course, a penalty is allocated to you the second you jump over that limit. So,
right, Inferno
cautious
moves
to avoid.
now. Yep.
He does indeed. Cautious to avoid the yellow flag, but unfortunately, look how. I mean, I don't know if the camera came away from that, but unfortunately, Inferno, as soon as he kind of came out of the pits, he drove straight over to the racing line. So.
Drive through for
hopefully
Inferno.
Yeah,
unless if it was a full cut, then yeah
it was unfortunately pretty blatant, and with the penalty being given earlier on in the race for somebody else, and it being in chat at least for the drivers to see,
probably should have served as a warning.
Yes, it's well, I mean, drivers of course should be conscious of everything going around, and since it's been mentioned in chat and drivers aren't always necessarily mute in chat, they can still see it pop up on their screen. I'm curious as to why it wasn't present in his mind when he left. But yeah, unfortunately, a drive through for number 75 Cruise God car driven by Inferno at the moment, out in the race lead.
That'll hurt him, especially considering Sobis and has served his stop.
Yeah, but I mean, Inferno's done a really good job to carry on lapping after the 3 UFRs at least in the top 4 pitted and got out again, because he's actually in the lead by 2.7 seconds, I think it was, at the last split. So Takahashi in P2 for Akagi Red Suns, the 2 that were having fun out at the front earlier on in the race, spread out by a couple seconds now, just because I think Inferno was able to keep the tyres alive a bit longer, run a bit longer with a bit less fuel, just be a bit faster overall. But disaster for him. He's got I'm not sure if Thilo, do you enforce 3 laps to serve drive-throughs, or can they serve it whenever they want in the race?
They shall serve it within 3 laps.
Okay, so he's got, of course, 3 laps,
which is a long time.
It is around here. It's like 10 minutes. Yeah. So Inferno was on, of course, I think he was just approaching turn number 2 on this very lap when he received the penalty. So he can either come in on this lap or in the next 2.
If I were him, I'd get it out of the way as soon as possible. But obviously, if you've only got 3 laps, then it doesn't really matter.
Yeah. another thing, I'm just looking at the tyre graph. It also includes the clutch temperature graph as well. And I noticed he must be flat shifting quite often because it's on the verge of transitioning from orange to red, which I think is about 15% in terms of the value within LFS. So healthy, but close to slipping. But I mean, you wouldn't really suffer too much unless it was quite high. Then you would you'd hit the limiter in 5th gear trying to do 14 miles an hour. But he comes in immediately to serve his drive-through, but chooses to stop in the box because his first stop was 19.44 seconds for fuel and all tyres, and the minimum stop he needs is 25 in that UFR. So he stopped for the remainder of his minimum pit stop time.
He can't stop as well as serve a drive-through. He'll have to do another trip through pit lane. You can't do both at the same time. So yeah, he should have done those individually. He also won't be able
he nearly rolled it. Did you see that?
Yeah, I did see that. He won't be able to make it to the end of the race on the tyres he's got either, will he?
Yeah, I'm not sure. There's 30 laps remaining in this race, and he managed, I think, 23 earlier on.
Yeah, 23 or 24.
With
24.
the tyres that, of course, he started the race on. Whether he can get to the end, where, I mean, he's got to be incredibly careful, but...
Yeah, this is going wrong for Inferno, very much so. I'm pretty sure he still has the drive-through, right?
I'm not sure. Thilo, what's the procedure
he
here?
served the drive-through.
So he can serve the drive-through and stop and...
Okay.
Because I don't think he made any adjustments to his car. It just, for me at least, on which I've got, which gives me a bit of information on pit stops, for example. I see that at 17 minutes past he entered the pit lane. He did stop in a box, but he didn't do anything to his car. So there was no tyres, no top up of fuel, nothing. He literally was stationary, nothing happened to the car, and he carried on. So I'm guessing that counts.
Yeah, so I guess maybe
Well,
if you do anything to the car, then maybe the drive-through is reissued. Sorry, Thilo, you were about to add something.
Usually in Liver Speed it's like this, that you cannot do any service on the yeah.
Alright, so good knowledge of the game there from Inferno, something we obviously a nuance we weren't familiar with.
Well, because at least for me, when he left the pit lane, because he didn't touch any of his car and nothing changed apart from him being stationary in the pit lane, in the pit box, the game classified his penalty as being served. So we'll see if he can go to the end. This will definitely switch up the strategy a bit, because I'm not sure if Takahashi, when he came in for his stop, served his minimum time. Maybe he has to stop again too.
There was discussion before the race, and as far as I knew, the UFR was able to go the whole distance, the whole race distance, with one pit stop. Now, whether that's been disproven or they're opting for an alternate strategy here, I have no idea, because as far as I can tell, if they were tyre or fuel limited on lap 23 or 24, whenever they came in, remember Takahashi pitted a lot earlier. So unless he did a short fuel run or something to begin with, maybe they're playing this out in a slightly different way. We will see. Just an update for the Lrf Class, the 99 car LFS Hungaria team, previously driven by Laszlo Kovac, has been taken over by Toga, and that car still leads the current 2-car field in the LX6 RAC and FZ5 class. This class does have 5 current sign-ups. Unfortunately, a couple of them weren't able to make round number 1. Remember that the Open Endurance Cup is a 4-round series consisting of 4 3-hour races. If this tickles your fancy and you want to come and bolster the grid a bit here, you can do so by signing up on the Live for Speed forum.
Yes, I mean, definitely exciting combinations coming up for you. throughout the year up until the 30th of August, which is the last round. So of course today we're here at Aston Grand Prix Reverse for 57 laps, or roughly 3 hours. Yeah, next time around will be the 19th of July 2020, so bit of a spread between the races, almost separated by a month each time, but there's 2 in August, one at the beginning, one at the end. So round number 2, again, like I said, 19th of July 2020. We are at Westhill International for 87 laps at WE2, which is around about 3 hours. That's the kind of format for Open Endurance Cup 5. And then round number 3 on the 2nd of August this year is at Kyoto Ring National Reverse, so KY2R.
Great track.
Then we have round 4 is at Blackwood Historic Reverse, so BL2R, 160 laps there, a very short lap at Blackwood.
Yeah, I think with a shorter track, with the field of this size, you'd end up with more on-screen, on-track action, a lot more lapping potentially. But yeah, AS5R is it's a good challenge to start the season with. As we watch Fragmaster's number driving what many consider to be the most difficult car to drive in the game. It's based on a real life car. It only has one arb. I believe it's in the front. Is it in the front or is it in the rear? I always forget. Anyway, the handling characteristics are such that because it only has one arb, it's particularly tricky to drive. And Number making a pretty good effort of it right now. Currently starts lap 26 of 57 here. He's doing this race all on his own. That was a nice little bit of bouncing over the first chicane.
Yeah,
Has a front arm.
taking the liberties with the second right kink of turn number 1 there. Car looks nice and healthy though. Tyres are perfect up to temperature, but he's got I mean some dirt on the tyres at least, as you can see just how flamboyant his driving style is. At least around turn number 2 he's having so much fun in the RAC, or the race about. I'd love to have a go in one of these in real life, you know. Pretty decent figures to be fair. It reminds me, at least in terms of the engine layout and how much it weighs, of something like a Lotus. Of course this bit bigger than a Lrf, bit smaller than an Esprit, but a 2-litre turbocharged inline-4 engine, which is, I mean, Lotus are renowned for their 4-cylinder turbocharged engines, like in the Esprit, apart from the V8, of course, which came a bit later on, which is, curiously enough, faster in a straight line in terms of top speed, but slower to 60 because it's heavier. But yeah, the race about 245 brake horsepower, very similar to Lotus figures, at least for the Esprit, which is about 270, and weighs 800 kilograms, and I think the Lotus is just above 1,000. So, I mean, a very, very good power to weight ratio for a road car. 800 kilograms is nothing really, you know. It's like the weight of a Clio that's been completely stripped, you know, and this is huge. Well, it's not huge, but it's not a small car by any stretch of the imagination. But no, a fun car to drive nonetheless. I'd love to have a go in one.
So, at the head of this race, Takahashi leads the way in the number 1 machine, and it's getting very tight in the background, Jack.
It is indeed. As it's going to unfold, of course, still so close in such a stage like this.
Eisberg currently in the middle of a sandwich of last lap motorsport drivers. It looks like Inferno was heading through the field, getting past these two after his extra pit stop that he made in order to serve his drive-through penalty.
No, so I think there's definitely some setup differences between these 3 cars at least, because Eisberg is in the middle of this pack at the moment. The inside of his front left is a lot warmer than the cars around him. However, his front right as a whole is quite a bit cooler. So whether that's different camber, obviously you can run asymmetrical sets on Lrf Speed, so the front left and the front right can have different camber amounts. So whether that lets his tyres last a bit longer, and whether that's just not enough camber to keep the temperature in. Of course, when you load this car up around the left-handers, it couldn't even be camber. It could even be the amount of pressure that he's running in each tyre respectively, but I mean, at the moment, in terms of how healthy the tyres are, I would want to put my money on either Inferno, whose front right looks very healthy, or Sobis at the back. Of course, I think Sobis was the last of the three to come out of the pits.
For their first stop, yes. Oh, Sobis runs wide onto the grass and peeps his horn in frustration a little bit there. Lost a ton of time. The first chicane here is brutal for these little tin top mini touring cars. Notorious in the opposite direction for rolling, actually. Saw a couple of cars rolling it in qualifying when they were on light fuel and absolutely caning it towards the chicanes. But so far in the race, as far as I know, no one's rolled it. It could be that Cozzy rolled it. We will confirm that for you later in the race.
I'm still being fed a little bit of snippets of information from Chris in the background again. He says a bit of RAC trivia for some of us. The handling was specifically designed to either be safe, in brackets understeer, or to be fun, of course, oversteer. Hence, only the one anti-roll bar. So basically what that's saying is it's impossible to make a neutral setup be fast.
Yeah, I mean, why not just do the normal thing and fit it with two arms? Why did it need... it doesn't make sense to me. When you drive it, it just feels odd. Did we just lose another car? We did. Paul Dolphin rejoins the track, and whatever happened there, that's the second car that's had to rejoin. He'll be giving his laps back, of course. But yeah, not a good to see. But at least he's still in the race.
Yeah, that's the most important thing, of course.
Yeah.
Lap 28 of 57. I mean, there's plenty that can happen, and a couple of drivers still yet to stop. We could see, again, some more people falling into the grasps of the drive-through penalties with the blend line. They could get a stop-go. Of course, you've got to be incredibly careful on warm tyres when you are coming into the pits. And people like to leave it as late as they possibly can to, be as fast as they possibly can. But I mean, you lock the fronts on these, of course, no ABS in the UFR. You are going absolutely straight on, and you're not scrubbing as much speed as off if, of course, the tyre wasn't completely locked. Oh, sorry, the brakes were completely jammed on at the front. But plenty to go. Lap 28 of 57 at the moment for the man in P3, which we currently ride on board with. Meanwhile, you lead it out in front by quite a stretch on lap 29 just come out of turn 2 actually. So there's quite a difference now in terms of whereabouts everybody is on track. So we're just looking at the difference between times for P2 and 3 at the moment. Earlier on, Inferno for Cruise God was, trading times again with who is in the race lead now, Takahashi for Akagi Red Suns. Ice Bear in P3 just behind Inferno is actually a little bit faster, not by much. The gap between the two at the moment, 0.9. We still run on board with Ice Bear, but Ice Bear was 1/100th of a second faster last time around. So running down through to turn number 6 now, the left-hander before the double apex right of turn number 7. The split was just before turn number 6, so the gap this time around it's still around 0.7, but again, Ice Bear, at least in split 1, was 0.2 faster than Inferno up ahead. So Ice Bear's first split time, 53.15. The man he's chasing down, the man just ahead, you can see on screen, Inferno, 53.34, so 1.9 of a second faster this time around for the man in third. Of course, he's aided by the the drag reduction system that's built into these cars by just following so close. He'll gain quite a bit on the straight here, but through at least sector 1, there's a long right-hander that he didn't really lose out too much on.
I think the drag reduction system is defined by natural physics.
Yes. An organic DRS, so to speak. So split number 2 is where the Petronas bridge is, just here. And we'll see an updated split time, of course. Ice Bear now only 0.57 behind P number 2, and again 0.2 faster, or well, sorry, just over a tenth, about a tenth and a half faster than the car ahead of him. So yeah, gained a couple tenths on this lap. Of course, he's a lot closer now. So if he can get a great exit through turn number 17, of course, he will be right on the back of Inferno, again aided by the natural drag reduction system that we have, and he's going to get a bit closer to P number 2 now.
I think it's a bit too far away at this point to make any use of the slipstream, but yeah, it seems as though Inferno has picked up the pace ever so slightly. The first chicane at this track is a great leveler. It's such that drivers just, it depends how much gumption you've got really, how much you decide to throw the car through it, how much you want to risk. The more you cut it, the more you risk damaging the car and rolling, and the less you risk, the slower you are. Ooh.
Yeah, it's definitely about risk for reward, but Ice Bear there locking the rears up into turn number 2, and Inferno with a little bit of a moment on the way out there. These two trading mistakes, trading times. The gap was 0.68 at the line. The only sector Inferno was faster than Ice Bear was the final sector, and only by 1/10 really. So what can Ice Bear do as we go underneath the Michelin bridge? The gap down to it's actually 0.97 now. So Inferno 2.9 tenths faster in sector 1, but I mean, these guys are just yo-yoing around, and the gap never really gets below half a second, never really gets above a second.
Again, Inferno runs a bit wide, and all these tiny mistakes that he's making are letting Eisbär know that he can get a P2 out of this race. If he keeps plucking away, keeps applying pressure, keeps putting in consistent lap times, he'll potentially be able to take over that P2 spot once again.
I don't know if we mentioned this on stream, Pete. I'm not sure if you were aware, but we've been told that the number 88 car of Paul Duffin, he rolled in the turn 1 chicane and he was unfortunately stuck on his roof. So
yeah, I mean, I assumed it would be something to do with rolling, because there's no other reason other than crashing and
the fact that you can't physically get back to the pits to have to jump to them. Yes.
Yeah, around here it would probably be a roll, but I didn't want to say until I confirmed. So thank you for that.
And I love all the little bits of information that Elmo keeps feeding us, Pete.
Yeah, maybe we can send him away to... Oh yeah.
He says number 42 in P3 that we've been riding on board with for a while now as he chases down number 75 has a shorter top gear than the car he's following, so we're not sure exactly what that would do for top speed, of course.
Yeah, it depends on the other gears.
Enables, it depends on the ratios, of course, and how different it is. But maybe tailored a bit more to the top speed that this car is realistically going to achieve down the straight here. Aston Grand Prix reverse. Since the cars have spread out ever so slightly, let's check. I'm going to have a look at Inferno's top speed just before he breaks. 236. And I think Ice Bear was, I think it's exactly the same, to be fair. So the torque of the engine and the ratio of the gears, I mean, of course it would be a little shorter.
I mean, it also depends how quickly he reaches that speed as well.
Exactly, yes. Because it all depends on, of course, the RPM of his engine and the ratio of the gear. I think he'd be likely to gain a bit more if he was in the draft, of course.
Yeah.
I mean, it depends how close the ratios are, of course. I mean, it's different, like IndyCar, for example. How short the final gear for IndyCar is. It's really used as an overtaking gear. But a couple hundred revs difference in terms of like red line. A couple like 3 or 4 mile an hour difference before you get to the red line in that said gear can make, you know, a world of difference depending on whether you were in the draft or not. Because if you have the draft, you can use that torque to kind of, you know, get that gear up to the extra revs. Whereas if you aren't, you are at risk of bogging down. So you've got to find a balance here. But Inferno, at least for the last lap and the lap that we're currently on, was faster with a 3-minute 2.98 last time around. Ice Bear is still pushing. Personal best lap for him in P3, but it's a 3-minute 3.12, so
I think the PLT car has got engine damage. If someone wants to try and confirm that for me. Maybe Elmo can squirrel away and try and maybe find out how Cozzy ended up pitting. I'm not sure if he was around when that happened, but maybe we will see that. Does that car have engine damage, or am I hearing things?
I'm not sure. Usually the way to diagnose engine damage from somebody else's car in lift speed is just to listen to the engine.
It has
note.
heavy engine damage. That car is losing a lot of power.
I've just jumped to them as well, and I can hear it's audibly obvious. So maybe a bit too bit happy with the left hand then.
There we go.
On the way down on the gears.
Another gear, just pulling the next gear. There's no over-rev protection on these NGTs. Even though it's a sequential with engine cut, you still need to make sure that you're not pulling a gear too early, else you'll over-rev and do what the PLT team have done here, unfortunately, and that is catastrophic for their race. They're going to be down a ton of time and a ton of power, and that lasts for the remainder of the race, of which we are now over halfway, by the way. It was a few laps ago, but we're over halfway here. Oh, big lock-up.
Of course, the ignition cut works has cut the power to the gearbox, and well, to the entire engine, so the gearbox is unloaded and it can jump into the next gear without the driver having to press the clutch down. But there's no protection on whether you can go from 6th to 1st at 100 miles an hour. And of course, I think the red line on these cars is around about 8k. So if you downshift a little early and you put, you know, 8,500 revs on the motor, that's going to cause, you know, quite a bit of damage, and you can hear the difference in engine note. If we switch to another XFR in a short while, you'll be able to compare the two. You could potentially run on board with the PLT car for a couple of corners so that you can just listen to.
Well, I've currently got Cozzy on the stream, and you can hear his engine is quite sprightly, and then we'll head to PLT. And you can just hear the granularity that kind of kicks in later on in the rev. Let's listen. Just sounds a little bit more gravelly when the engine note changes, and that's a key sign that they have over-revved that engine in lift speed.
Yep. So the note changes. You can almost hear the revs going up a bit lethargically. Don't want to climb. Just a lack of power.
Misfiring, essentially.
And that's unfortunately unable to be fixed during a pit stop. You need a fresh car to get rid of engine damage within LFS.
And we'll see this effect compounded, I think, as we have Inferno catching up to the PLT car. Yes, they're at different ends of the grid. Don't forget that the PLT machine is inside the top 10. It's P9. It's got 3 cars on behind it for track position. Cozzy, Paul Duffin and Mr. Fetch. So, depending on how much damage it's got, it might be able to stay ahead. But yeah, that car now is being lapped and will be shown the blue flag as Inferno in P2 slips by, and you can see just the difference in speed.
Yeah, I mean the XFR at least in a straight line, once it gets to the end of the straight, should be faster than the UFR, but you can just see the huge difference at the moment. The PLT car, 208 kph as it turns into the corner.
Yeah, I mean the gap between Inferno and Eisbar has absolutely rocketed once again. But now we're going to see Eisbar on the straight. There's no doubt that he's going to be up to within the PLT car's slipstream. But whether he'll be past its turn 1 or not, I think he will be. I think he's got.
I think he's more than likely going to be almost alongside by the time we get to the start-finish line. You can see just how much speed he has. The UFR should theoretically be the slower of the two, and it reached 234 kilometers before we braked, and yeah, unfortunately for the XFR that's been lapped, it's considerably less. But make that be a lesson. One small mistake, one little extra downshift that you might not have even intended to do can, you know, of course, over rev the engine and have a catastrophic effect on your race as a whole. Unfortunately, again, like we said, it's something that cannot be fixed.
Apparently Cozzy rolled it on lap 16 at turn number 1. Thank you, Elmo, for that.
Yeah, so like we were saying during qualifying and the build up to the race, turn 1 is the corner really to take it really easy, especially in these racing cars. Maybe not so much in the road cars. They tend to be a bit softer in terms of setup. However, you can adjust it the way you want it within LFS, but inherently these smaller, narrower, shorter wheelbase cars will suffer more over the huge curbs that we see in turn number 1. But you thought these curbs were bad. What happens when we get to round 4 of Open Endurance Cup
Blackwood.
5 at Blackwood Historic Reverse on the 30th of August? The sausage curves there are huge,
Yeah, the
and
UFR
they're on a few places around that track, so one to look out for there.
Just stay away from the curbs. That is the key at Blackwood.
Is indeed, and with such a long race, you know, you could be sacrificing a half a tenth every time you take the longer way around to avoid the curb. But it could be the difference between you finishing and not if you make a mistake. As I'm just currently watching Takahashi out in the lead. He's getting incredibly close to the outside of Parabolica, which is turn number 17 that we've nicknamed, of course. Taking it in the different direction to how Parabolica is taken at Monza in real life. We're going to the left, those guys go to the right, but the elevation change is very similar as well. I think at least on the outside of Parabolica, as the corner goes through, the track does fall downhill ever so slightly.
Elmo points out that we're using the configuration at Blackwood that avoids the chicane. And I'm assuming that the reason for that, or partly the reason for that, maybe Thilo can confirm, is because the UFR and XFR hate high curbs and sausage curbs. I don't know, maybe not. Maybe it's just because it will create better racing with, one fewer chicane. But yeah.
There are still plenty of big curbs at Blackwood though, not even counting the chicane that drivers will want to avoid.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember where the other sausage curbs are around that lap. I think there's one at the penultimate corner in the new facelift version of Blackwood.
Yeah, there's also one on the inside of the left-hander just before the bridge. I think it's, at least with this configuration, it would be left-hander of turn number... Yeah, it'd be turn 4, the left-hander there. And not necessarily roll you, but you catch that at speed. That will throw you out into the barrier on the outside.
We've passed the 2 hours of racing mark. Oh no, not quite. Sorry, my mistake. We are approaching the 2 hours of racing mark. And Takahashi leads the way. Inferno runs around in P number 2. Then we've got Concept Racing Eyre in P number 3. Last Lap Motorsports Sobis in P number 4. Then it's the first of the launch racing cars, David Dolphin in the number 24 launch racing car, P number 5. Alex Coop in P number 6 for launch racing. Then we've got Michael Malek for Free Candy Racing. And Matthew Duffin in P8. Then it's PLT Iman in P9 with that engine damage that's costing him a lot of time. Cozzy for Google Cup Racing Team is catching him up actually. I reckon that gap's going to come down considerably, and yeah, the PLT team may well lose a position in a couple of laps time. We'll make sure we spot that when it happens.
Yeah, well, last time around, Cozzy was in the 3-minute 5s and PLT, at least their car, in the 15s, so they are losing around about 10 seconds a lap. The gap is 40 seconds, so, you know, 4 laps, we'll see how close they are.
Yeah, that's huge. Paul Duffin in P11 for launch racing. Mr. Fetch is getting lapped there by one of the Last Lap Motorsport UFRs. And then we move to the Lrf class. Currently 2 cars contesting this class. The podium will be interesting for that, won't it? We've got the LFS Hungaria team currently driven by Toga. Toga was handed the car earlier by Laszlo Kovac. Whether Laszlo's getting back in the car remains to be seen. But yeah, Toga currently at the wheel of that machine. And Number, who's doing this race all on his own for Fragmasters, is rounds out our 14 car field here. We've had 4 dropouts so far. Fingers crossed we don't get any more in the laps that remain.
Yeah, I don't think anybody really can get near the pace of our lead car at the moment. The Akagi Red Suns car, number 1, put it on pole. Currently holds the fastest lap, which was only, of course, set a few laps ago on lap 32. We're on lap 35 now. And also holds the fastest split time in all 3 sectors around the lap. Of course, Inferno earlier for Cruise God held at least the fastest sector in split 2 and 3. However, just without, you know, maybe the encouragement of being so close behind the leader and the little fun battle that they had earlier, trading times and switching places and using each other for draft, has not been able to respond just yet, but still in P2, still comfortably in P2. The gap to Ice Bear has gone up quite a bit now. We were talking about it earlier. It was around about 0.7. We were talking how it never really went under half a second, never really went over a second. It's now 6.5, so whether Ice Bear's just dropped off a little bit, maybe he's taking his time, maybe there's some time management involved. Of course, we don't know when he's going to stop again. They've definitely spread out on track at the moment, but they are, again, in terms of being on the same lap and, you know, of course, being as close to each other as you know, you could be to another car. They are the 2 closest on the track at the moment. The PLT car has managed to find a little bit of pace, but again, it's still around 8 seconds a lap slower than it should be. However, I've noticed they've decided to put R4s on the front of the PLT car, whereas every other car in the NGTR class are running R3, R2, front to rear.
I'm guessing that's very cold right about now.
I'll have a look, shall I?
Please do.
So yeah, really the only temperature I can see are on the insides of both of the front tyres. The outer sidewall on both of the front tyres are, you know, colder than cold, really, like room temperature almost.
Death of the universe.
Yeah, absolute 0, about 2 Kelvin. That's how hot they are. But yeah, no, maybe. Well, he's definitely struggling to keep temperature in the core of the tyre. Of course, that's not going to be helped by the fact that he's massively hindered by the engine damage that team has picked up at some point. So again, not going as fast into the corners as he would, not able to put as much load on the tyres as he'd like to keep the temperature in those R4s on the front of that.
Get a look at his top
XFR.
speed into the braking zone. We'll compare.
So he's currently 226. Yeah, 226 exactly at the braking zone there. And yeah, the XFR just behind. 237, I think, 236. So 10 k's down on the straight. And not only are you down on top speed, you're down on acceleration, power in general. But it's gonna hinder him up the hill, and basically anywhere where you have to get on the power. Really, he's handicapped quite significantly. Still about 10 seconds off of Cozzy's time, who's still hunting him down. The gap, again, when we spoke about it earlier, was 40 seconds. It's not quite halved, though it's getting close though. 26 seconds separate P9 and 10. Remember, this of course is a battle for position when the time comes, when Cozzy gets closer. These two are again racing for position, so we'll see if PLT could put up much of a fight by potentially parking his car. But again, he's going to just get hindered on the way out, and this is a very wide track here at Aston.
It is indeed. I hear that well, Laszlo in the chat for LFS Hungary says that he will be taking over the car again for the final stint. Toga currently driving that car in P13 overall and P1 in class. Apparently Toga is either has or is about to do the world record, upload the world record for this combo in the LX6. I wonder how many people have even attempted the LX6 world record at Aston Grand Prix reversed.
I'm too scared to try. I drive that car for fun, not because I'm fast.
Oh, Takahashi getting very sideways out of the first chicane.
Yeah, tyres look pretty healthy. Out in the lead though. I will just scroll back up and check if when he made his stop earlier he stopped for his allocated minimum pit stop time, which for the UFR is 25 seconds.
I imagine that Thilo's keeping track of people's pit stops, or maybe that'll be done in post. Probably a bit too much to keep an eye on during the race. Especially considering it's a one-man show here. Thilo's doing all the heavy lifting on his own. So yeah, as we expected really, the balance of performance at the pit stop didn't really have much of an effect in this race, because the actual mandated pit stop time, or the difference between those times, is incredibly short, because the lap times between the UFR and XFR here should be wow, basically the same. Over a 3-hour race, having a delta of about well, maybe Thilo can fill us in on his stats once he's actually put them together, but yeah, it has made very little difference to how this race is shaped up in the end so far. We currently have four UFRs in the top 4 positions. Then is the first of the launch racing cars, but also the first XFR in the race. Quite a considerable distance behind. But yeah, the only UFRs in the race are in the top 4 positions, and the rest of the NGT class are XFRs from 5th through 12th.
So Ice Bet, in
Yep.
P number 3, he's not quite responding to the times Inferno is putting out for Cruise God in P number 2 at the moment, the number 75 car. However, he has just set a personal best race lap. He's got into the 3-minute 2s. So just 3-minute 2.99 for the man in second position. And literally, as I say that, looking at the graph, I was going to say Inferno 3-minute 2.7, but last time around, 3-minute 1.91. And the fastest lap of the race by Takahashi for Akagi Red Suns is 1/100th faster. So Inferno opened the valves, pressed the loud pedal,
Yeah,
has
they're def-
absolutely obliterated his prior personal best and almost matched the fastest lap of the race. So again, the gap was, I think, about 6.7 seconds the last time we checked between P2 and 3. It's just shy of 9 now. So definitely Inferno has pace. But yeah, I saw a slow car of Michael as I'm running on board with Takahashi there, just off to the left, and Michael has another puncture on the rear left. So we were talking about it could potentially be that shock damage. Whether it has happened again due to that shock damage, we'll see. But I mean,
it
he's
definitely
got
has an effect. Yeah, this is too
got-
few laps to have 2 punctures, Jack.
Yeah, and
race.
exactly where he's had it in the first sector, I think, because he's been suffering all the way through this middle sector, trying to get the car to just even go in a straight line. He's got to nurse it all the way around. I mean, we're in turn 7, 8?
Yeah,
When I saw him, he was on the outside of turn 7. So yes, he's got to nurse it all the way round up the long straight without getting a puncture on the rear right.
Yeah, he has to repair that car now.
Yeah, the inside of the rear right tyre is probably, I think, about the way it looks, around about 95 to 100 degrees. So whether that could be another puncture waiting to happen, like we saw the double puncture as he was nursing the car back to the pit lane earlier, you know, it's had a catastrophic effect on his race, and he needs to fix that damage this time around.
PLT, the car behind, is currently in the sweepers with engine damage, remember, running about 8 seconds off the pace. But if Michael's going to be trundling around with no rear tyres for a minute again, like he did last time, PLT could move up to P8 with half an engine. So Michael, yeah, just making his way past the support pits, essentially, up to the final corner. But yeah, the damage must have been so uneven, or so yeah, something's gone on there with the suspension, because there's no way you should get punctures that quickly.
And that's a car off in 12th position, Mr. Fetch, who's unfortunately just received a drive-through penalty 2 for a chat violation in the middle of the race. He rejoins right at the end of at the start of the start-finish straight, just outside turn number 17. He's of course, I think, going to come in this lap to serve his drive-through penalty, but running down in 12th, unfortunately, at the moment, the last car in class. He's got 43 seconds to Paul Dolphin in the number 88 launch racing machine in P11, after I think it was Paul who rolled it, unfortunately, earlier in the race at turn number 1. So disaster for car number 20 down in 12th position. They serve their drive-through and are on their way. The gap up to 53 seconds at the line, but that was really only at the start of when he served his drive-through. So I assume the gap to the car ahead, at least for P12, will be well over a minute now.
Yeah, how's Michael Mallet getting on? Has he replaced his tyres already? Yes, he has. So
He did
that's
indeed.
His
So
pit stop done.
Yep. His second pit stop, 19.34 second stop, and he refueled and changed all tyres. But I've noticed again, at least for the little application I'm using to let me know the information on pit stops and whatnot,
PLT in the pits. Sorry to
there
interrupt.
is no damage repair gone on at all with that vehicle.
So it's going to get another puncture in this race. There's
It could do.
18 laps left.
So
Yeah.
with that, it's the rear left. So with it being an anti-clockwise track, it'd be the inside left tire. So he's either locking that up a hell of a lot, or the shock damage, which is, if you're familiar with LFS, it's about halfway. The shock damage, whether that is, causing damage, whether I don't know, the tire just doesn't like rebound correctly, could be influencing a potential rear left lockup. But either way, he's using way too much of the rear tires and locking them up to the point where for the past 2 stints he has unfortunately had catastrophic results and had a double puncture in both of his stints. And we're on lap 38 of 57 now, so he did 37 laps.
Climbs and PLT together. So yeah, PLT just made a pit stop. All you PLT fans out there, PLT is, who's he battling with? Oh, he's behind Climbs. Okay, so yeah, PLT pitted, Climbs goes past, finally closes that gap down, and yeah, the number 7 car, which is being driven by Cozzy and Climbs, back up to P9 after the roll on lap 16, which forced them to pit and rejoin, and losing a lap because of that. They're up to P9.
So yeah, it's good to see that they're climbing their way back up the order through the ranks,
Pun
so
intended.
to speak.
But yeah, I wonder now whether, because of the damage that Michael Mallock's got, whether Climbs could potentially inherit P8 if Michael comes under more problems.
I think he will, to be fair. I don't want to jinx anything or do the commentator's curse, but I think he split his... I think he just pitted when he had the puncture, really, and we covered 37 laps of racing at least by the time he picked up the second puncture. So if we divide that down the middle, that's 18.5 laps that he managed right down the middle with the 2 punctures. There are 20 remaining in the race. So if the damage is, for the last 2 stints, we believe that to be the cause of the punctures causing all of this, there is adequate time for it to regrettably happen again. So towards the closing stage of the races, we'll keep an eye on his tyres. Again, like we said last time, he chose not to fix the damage, just to refuel and change his tyres.
Sobers to the pits. So Sobers is making a second pit stop. He drops to 5th now, which means David Duffin inherits P number 4, but he's also in the pits actually.
He is indeed.
So these two doing their services, and interestingly, David Duffin pulls away first.
He does indeed. So David, again, just refuel and all tyres. No damage really on that car to fix, but a nice 19.86 second stop. Whereas Sobis, his second pit stop, over twice the length of David's pit stop, 42 seconds. So
what did he
it's
do?
quite well for a start. It's refuel, minor body damage, left front damage, right front damage, left rear damage, and all tyres. So
that must have been major damage on that car then.
There were no major damage, as in the quotations that Live for Speed says major damage. So whether that was just potential curb damage on the control arms of that car, it all adds up, and the stop was well over twice as long as David's stop. But again, David in the XFR and Sobis in the UFR, which we know is the faster of the 2 cars. Be curious to see if Sobis can catch back up. The gap is 10.17 seconds, and we have 18 laps remaining. So what can Sobis do? So of course, obviously, for the lap counter at the top says 41 out of 57, whereas these guys aren't on the same lap as the leader at the moment, because the leader is just going through turn number 2 on lap 41. These guys are still on lap 40, so 18 laps to go for these guys. Plenty of time really for the UFR to catch up to the back of the XFR. I'll keep you posted on the gaps as they come down. let's. I'm going to keep an eye on the gap between P11 and P10 as well. Paul Dolphin, of course, is still behind the PLT car at the moment, who just made their stop. The gap's 19 seconds. But again, that engine damage unfortunately hindering the PLT car to basically give away around 8 or more seconds per lap. So that gap should come down in the next few. I don't think at this stage of the race anybody's necessarily pushing or has a car that's in a position to, you know, take away the purple split times, but we are seeing 1 or 2 personal best sectors every now and then. Inferno personal best split 2, which is about 4/10 faster than the race leader at the moment. The gap between P1 and 2 is about 28 seconds at the moment. Of course, unfortunately, Inferno did not adhere to the pit exit line, the yellow line that we have on the exit of the pits. As soon as he came out and released his pit limiter, he went straight over to the racing line, and even though the track was clear, it's a violation of the rules, and unfortunately he picked up a drive-through penalty, which is why he's not right at the very front, trading times with the race leader, the number 1 car, Akagi Red Suns, who again also put their car on pole position. So that's why the gap between P1 and 2 is so significant.
Yeah, they were seemingly having a bit of fun working together, playing around at the head of the field at the beginning of the race, but after Inferno's pit stop, he crossed the blend line and got himself a drive-through, and that separated them for the vast majority of the race at this point.
So Paul Dolphin has responded. I'm just looking at him in P number 11. He's just set a fastest personal best lap this race. And speaking of that, they must have heard me out in front. The Akagi Red Suns have just set the fastest lap of the race. Now, it was a mediocre first and second split for the car out in the lead. However, a purple split 3 means they came across the line and did a 3-minute 1.75. Now, that is just shy of pole position, just shy, 2/10 shy of what we saw them accomplish in qualifying. So the pole time was a 3-minute and 1.54, and if they'd have just done the lap that they did on lap 41 for them of the race, they would have been second on the grid.
Yeah, they must be coming to the end of their tyres and fuel.
Yeah, unbelievable pace. We might see them in the pits very soon, and considering Inferno, we know he went, I think it was around 23 laps before he came in. He was the last of the UFR frontrunners to make his stop. If he can look after his tyres in P2, and it's a big ask, he could potentially stay out for the remainder of the race. So, I mean, to be fair, rather than the tyres, it comes down to the amount of fuel that you can use. Of course, we've got a long race and a 1 stop in a 3-hour race. And just in terms of how big the tank is in the car is a lot to ask for. But, yeah, I'd be curious to know if that's actually possible. But, I mean, even if Akagi Red Suns pit from P number 1, Inferno, if they do stay out, the number 75 machine, the Cruise God car in P number 2, they will be looking after the tyres to such a degree that, you know, Takahashi can pit from the lead, be behind, and just use all the car, use all the fuel, use all the tyres to kind of do his best to catch up, and then we'll see what the times are, what the drivers and what the car is really capable of. So Paul Dolphin's coming up to the back of the PLT car now. Just around the corner.
Yeah, it's only a matter of time. There's going to be a UFR going past as well. Look at the overspeed.
Yeah, that's the leader there.
Yeah. Puts another lap on Alberto.
So PLT again, at least for the braking zone, 225 kilometers an hour, and the car behind chasing him down at least 10 faster, at least 10 k's faster down the straight. So we'll see how quick. You'll see the launch racing car close up to the back of P10 now. And remember, even though unfortunately PLT has got the engine damage, it'll be hard for them to, see their competition in the same machinery just drive around them like that. Unfortunately, potentially just due to one unfortunate downshift at the wrong time, to put too many revs on that motor, which, if you're unaware, is the reason that PLT car is so much slower, around 8 seconds a lap slower. And you can see there's just no contest to it. Unfortunately, that'll be a painful one for the PLT guys. But what can you do? This is racing. It could happen to anybody. We're on lap 41 of 57 now, so plenty of laps ahead still.
With no over-rev protection, it's remarkably easy to accidentally double downshift.
Yeah.
Yeah. Which is,
and I must say, when I play other sims and they sometimes have over rev protection, I sometimes complain. I'm thinking, no, the car won't let me downshift. But again, it's to prevent things like this. Unfortunately, you can over rev certain engines a little bit, because sometimes the rev limiter, obviously electronically rev limited to a certain RPM, you can sometimes adjust that. So maybe you can get away with running 8k on the motor for a short amount of time, but the actual true electronic rev limiter is set to 7.5. Sometimes in the braking zones you can put 8k on the motor for a short amount of time and give yourself a little bit more engine braking without really damaging the engine. But in some scenarios you put more revs on the engine than the engine can handle, and then the valve float can result in loss of compression and stuff like that. So yeah, you don't want to bend valves in engines. That's expensive.
I was just saying, thinking earlier, Jack, this must be a record for you in terms of the amount of sim racing that you've watched in a weekend. You watched me and our team in the Le Mans 24-hour on iRacing this weekend, and now you're sitting here 2 hours after the end watching more racing in Lrf Speed. This has been quite a weekend.
Well, it's been brilliant. I didn't really get to commentate yesterday because I was spotting for you guys for the entirety of the race. Well, the majority really, until I got a couple hours kipped towards the end. But yeah, no, I mean, I'd like to have taken part in Le Mans this year. Of course, we've done it for the last 2 years, haven't we, Pete? So it's been good fun. But with our well, I say mine and yours at least, our interest in the SMRC Championship that we're taking part in on iRacing. I don't know. I've struggled to adapt to the LMP2 car from the Cayman GT4, which is just a completely different kettle of fish, really.
Our leaders in the pit.
So yeah, but Takahashi, into the pit lane. I'll let you know exactly how long he stops for and what he takes. But I assume this will be the shortest stop he can possibly get away with. Where will P2 be? The gap was 28.31 at the last split, but Inferno in P2. Personal best split number 2 time, and sets the fastest lap of the race while he's at it. Purple split 3. So Inferno goes through just there. You can see. Hopefully Takahashi keeps an eye on those pit lane limits. He comes out just ahead of the lapped car of Coupe for Launch Racing. So you have a change of the lead now. Inferno out in front, sets the fastest lap of the race while he's at it. A 3-minute 1.62. 3-minute 1.62. Let's have a look where their qualifying times were. 3-minute 1.62 is 0.08 away from qualifying P1, and you can bet your bottom dollar that on that lap Inferno didn't really have any draft at all to aid him around the lap. Not to say that the cars in qualifying did either, but just to show the raw pace that he's capable of. Yeah, unbelievable to see. I mean, we'll know the gap in just a second, because we're rounding where the Michelin bridge is, where the split line is, and the gap is 5.69 seconds.
Yeah, Inferno yet to set his well, it will be his 3rd pit stop, but it will be his 2nd pit stop for fuel and tyres.
So do we think he could get to the end?
No.
Or is that not even a possibility?
No.
Because we
no
know
way.
he did 23 laps on the tyres earlier. No way you could
I
eke
highly
that
doubt
out a
it.
bit.
No.
Because he did stop again, but I don't know if he did any servicing or not.
He stopped during his drive-through, didn't he? And didn't do any service time. So I mean, unless he's planning on going to the end, that's if he manages it, that's impressive. That would be a heck of a strategy. Unless Takahashi's pitted just to be conservative, maybe on the tyres. Maybe he thought he was getting a bit thin.
Oh no, I just looked at his tyres. They are incredibly thin.
Okay.
I thought I'd clicked
There you
onto the wrong car, and I was looking at P2. I was like, those tyres are brand new, but no, they are P1. At the moment, the tyre looking worse for wear is the inside left, so the left rear. So we will expect to see him in the pits very soon.
Yeah, how's Michael Mallet getting on? How are his rear tyres getting on? We're not expecting a puncture from him for another couple of laps, but it's maybe worth having a check.
Yeah, so we were debating, of course, whether the damage is the reason that he's getting those left rear punctures, or whether it's the fact that he's just stamping on the brake a bit hard and locking that inside left rear. At the moment, the surface temperatures for the rear tyres look okay as he runs a little bit wide through turn number 6 and 7. He's okay though, he's on the track for the majority of the time anyway. He's having a blast out in P number 8 at the moment. But yeah, no, like I was saying, at least the surface temperature of the tyre, I'm not seeing any spikes, so it's not as though there are flat spots anywhere on the surface of those tyres. So again, I've got a feeling that it's just the shock damage, and that car is potentially not as forgiving on that left rear corner as it should be with the shock at 100%, functioning. So it remains to be seen whether he will get to the end without a puncture, but like I said earlier, we worked it out. Every time he'd got a puncture, he'd done roughly about 18.5 laps, and when he came in on lap 37, of course, on the way out to start lap 38, means that obviously he has to do 20 laps with those tyres, and every time he's got to 18.5, that's when we've had an issue. So I wonder how he'll get on throughout the race, but I mean, his rear tyres look pretty healthy, to be fair. His rear left at least looks healthier than the rest of the other tyres. His rear right looks like he's got more wear on it than the rear left, and the rear left's the one that's been punctured twice now, and the right rear has followed suit on the way into the pit lane, trying to recover that car. But to say he's had the race that he's had, at least the initial puncture was converted into a double puncture. I'm not quite sure what happened the second time around. He's doing really well to run in P number 8 and have 4 cars in class behind him.
Yeah. Thanks for that. While you were giving us a detailed exposition of Michael's race, we saw that Laszlo Kovac for LFS Hungary, they're currently leading the 2-car Lrf Class. Laszlo Kovac has taken back over from Toga for the final stint.
Yeah, that was quite a lengthy stop, to be fair.
Well, remember that they have to serve the huge amount of extra time in the LX6.
Of course, that would explain 100%. I didn't realise they were in
it's over 100
the LX6.
seconds.
So yeah, 130 seconds over the entirety of the race distance for the LX6.
And number pulls up into the pit box.
In the Lrf class.
So yeah.
But yeah, 43.48 second stop just for tyres and fuel. So yeah. Now the RAC has to stop for a combined time of 41 seconds throughout the race, and I believe this is Number's second pit stop of the race. I'll just do the math in a minute and have a look at his first pit stop time and confirm that he's all good.
Yeah, I expect Inferno to be in the pits in the next couple of laps. He stopped a couple of laps it was the lap before. He got issued his drive-through the lap after his pit stop, and that was on lap 22. So he should be in now or the next lap, if he's going on a strategy that I think he is.
Yeah, so earlier on Number's pit stop was 22.5 seconds, and with him having to serve 41 seconds, he needed to make a stop of at least 18.5. However, he chose to refuel, repair some minor body damage. He had some right front suspension damage, and he replaced all 4 tyres. So he needed to stop for 18.5 seconds, but he doubled that. He stopped for 36.9 seconds, so more than served his minimum pit stop time. He's more than safe now. He can drive to the end of this race. We're on lap 44, at least for the car I'm on board with.
46
lap 46
overall,
for the leader out of 57. I'm on board with Michael. I'm still keeping an eye on his tyres.
Yeah, Michael's tyres won't go until... I reckon he might just scratch it through to the end if he keeps driving like he was, but it's going to get close. I mean, if he pops the tyre on the last lap, then that's 3 sets of punctures in one race. He's already lost so much time. He should have repaired the damage at his last pit stop.
I mean, maybe he knows something that we don't.
I mean, it's possible that it's just a setup problem. He's got way too much rear locking, and that's just
it
a
could
problem.
be.
Yeah.
Yeah, however, I'm not seeing the surface temperatures to at least account for that. But
Weird.
again, I'm not driving the car, so I can't really make a judgment. But from what I see, the second I got that initial puncture, regardless of whether I thought it was the damage or not, from the amount of damage, like I said, if you're familiar with LFS, it is about 50% rear left shock damage. I'd have that fixed straight away, because even though the alignment is correct and everything is pointing in a straight line in terms of toe and camber and whatnot, you are suffering in the corners from the fact that your shock is not doing what it needs to. It's not damping the suspension like it should, and that could be the reason.
For those of you just joining us, you're currently watching round 1 of a 4-round season of the 5th instalment of the Open Endurance Cup here in Lrf Speed. We are Sim Broadcast, and we are broadcasting all 4 rounds live on Twitch from 16:30 UTC. The next round is on Sunday the 19th of July, and that comes from West Hill International with the same 2 classes again, the NGT, the UFR and XFR cars, and the Lrf Class, the LX6, RAC and FZ5. There's still time to sign up for the series if you're interested. You can do that on the LFS forum in the Open Endurance Cup sub-forum. Come and get involved. Still 3 races to go, and it's been a good one.
Yeah, definitely. Our leader chooses again to stay out this time around. And just to reiterate what Pete said, if you can't find the correct forum area, feel free to click the calendar link in the Twitch description. It will also be in the upload on YouTube after the race is done. You can see on our broadcast calendar there is a link to the series website, which is a direct link to the correct area on the Lrf Speed forum to help you guys find it easier. But I'm just noticing as well, I just had the suspension diagnostic thing open because I was looking at Michael's rear left damage. Now our leader has got quite significant rear left shock damage too, and he doesn't necessarily seem to be suffering with any extended tyre wear. So again, it could just be down to the fact that Michael's locking that rear left. However, I'm curious to see, as there's no surface temperature anomaly to account for the lockup. Of course, in Lrf Speed you have certain patches of the tyre that get updated every second. It's not just one temperature around the entirety of the tyre. There are different kind of sections of the tyre, and every now and then if you have a significant splat, is this puncture for the leader? I'm just on board with him, a rear right puncture for the leader.
Oh, that's going to be a long in lap, so there's going to be a change for the lead. Here comes
Takahashi. So we thought Takahashi would have the race lead after the Inferno makes his pit stop anyway, but he's got double puncture now. Both of the rears have given way, and you can see the tyre deformation. He's struggling to keep that in a straight line, and he does clout the barrier.
Yep.
Not very hard, but he's got quite hot outer front temperatures too, so he could have a puncture on the front at some point too. He's got such a long way to go though to get that car back.
Yeah, Icebear's going to be on
the
him.
pit lane.
Icebear's going to get P2.
Icebear's got 1 minute and 5 behind at the moment. Before, I mean, the last split line that we went through. Yeah, the last split line that we went through was in turn 5, where the Michelin bridge is. That's
going to be
such
a long in lap. Yeah, it's just going to be absolutely uncontrollable. He's going to have to be careful he doesn't get collected by other people here. Yeah, he could lose the full minute to Icebear.
Not only that, but Dolphin is 47 seconds behind Icebear, and if Inferno's not careful and he makes, even the slightest adjustment to the steering in the wrong way and that car turns around on him, he's going to lose even more time. He might even find himself off the podium by the time he's changed his tyres. You can see plenty of cars making the way through. So where's Ice Bear at the moment?
He's coming through the 180 corner at the beginning of the back straight where we saw
turn 10.
Yeah, where we saw Takahashi spin out and nearly collect number.
Yeah, so Ice Bear in turn 10 now. He's got the kink of 11 to get him onto that straight, and the car ahead he's trying to chase down the injured car of Inferno at the moment for Cruise God, the number 75 machine. It was just at the end of this straight. He will have made his way through the hairpins now. He's going through the right-hander of turn number 14 as Ice Bear is still at full tilt. Healthy tyres, healthy lap times, conservative driving is going to get him to the end. I think we're going to see a change for position before we even get onto the back straight. I think Inferno is going to suffer quite a lot through the long left-hander of turn number 17. You can see exactly where Ice Bear is now, going through that right-hander that Inferno did just a few moments ago, turn number 14, and this is where the gap closes. You can see how much Inferno is struggling in this long left-hander. He's on the inside on the grass. We're going to see a change for position before we even get out of the corner if we're not lucky. Sorry, if we're not.
We know what you meant.
Yeah.
Here he comes.
Struggling to just even keep it in a straight line. His front right tyre is absolutely on fire, and if anything, he's got more traction on the grass
here
than he has on the tarmac.
So, for the viewers who are confused as to why Inferno pushed it so long before coming in, a weird characteristic of LFS is that the cars are faster with tyre wear. It's a fundamental flaw of the tyre physics model. LFS's tyre physics are generally very, very good and heralded by many as still one of the best.
Yeah, I mean, considering how old the game is.
In any sim, yeah, you're right.
You're one of the first sims to have tyre flex and everything else, sidewall flex and carcass temperatures and things like that. They were well ahead of the time.
Yeah, and
carry on.
He would have been using that pace to try and gap the Takahashi and Ice Bear, because he knew that the second he came in, he was probably going to get at least overtaken by Takahashi. But at the end of the day, I would probably have erred on the side of caution and come in and settle for P2, because now you're in P3. That would have been his mindset. He would have been just trying to eke out as much time as possible to make sure that he came out as far up the road as he could.
So Paul Dolphin got pretty close to that third position, but just one corner separates him from Inferno now, who's made his way out of the pits and is currently in turn 4, whilst Paul Dolphin rounds turn number 2, just a couple hundred meters behind, maybe a bit more than that, maybe about 500 meters behind. But that's not a lot. I mean, you might think 500 meters, half a kilometer is a long, distance, but the track is 8.8 kilometers in length. So,
and it's a 3-hour race.
Yeah, for Paul to be so far back and for Inferno to have the unfortunate puncture that he did, he's incredibly lucky to still be on the podium. So, I don't think he was going to win the race because he had to stop again regardless, and the Akagi Red Sun car would have taken the lead as it is in now anyway.
It's not over yet, remember, so we could still see something happen. We've got 10 laps to go. Just under, or is it just under half an hour left. The Open Endurance Cup, even though the races are timed to around about 3 hours, we use laps rather than a timer, just so that the drivers who are competing can it's easier to plan your strategy. You don't necessarily have to do a 3-hour run or a 2-hour run or something to work out your strategy.
Things can differ in race lengths as well if it's not determined by exact laps. Of course, depending on your pace, you could miss out on an extra lap by a matter of a couple tenths a lap, depending on your strategy. So if you're slightly faster than you expected to be, you might actually find that the race distance, if it's determined by time, would run a lap longer than what you've practiced for, and you might not have enough fuel for that. So what we do, well, what Thilo does, at least I'm pretty sure he can probably confirm this if he's still around in the commentary box, is they'd look at a race and find a rough average lap time and round it to the nearest lap as close to 3 hours as they possibly can. Then all the racers know exactly how many laps they've got to get done, and for strategy it's a lot easier to plan than it is if you were to just go by time.
Makes things a little bit simpler. We're riding on board with Takahashi, who is doing a stellar job of guiding his little UFR through the kink on the back straight and up the hill towards the final sector of the the Aston Grand Prix reversed lap.
Takahashi still holds the fastest split 1 and 2. However, Inferno earlier on, just before he suffered that catastrophic puncture, did take the fastest lap of the race and the fastest final sector. But I'm just looking, the actual fastest lap of the race, I think he set that once again that I must have missed, because it was a 3-minute 1.44, and the qualifying pole time was a 3-minute 1.54. So we've actually seen the car on pole, who's led the majority of this race, have its lap beaten by a tenth by the man in second position in qualifying at least.
Oh, right. Okay.
Yeah, they qualified P2. Sorry for the confusion there. They in qualifying managed a 3-minute 1.79, but did a 3-minute 1.44 in the race. So that goes to show how hard he was pushing, and I'm sure he would have come in at the end of the lap he was on anyway. So yeah, no, really devastating for him to have to nurse the car as far as he did, but he's on the podium still. The gap to the car ahead is 32 seconds, so unless something juicy happens, he's going to remain there. He's safe to 4th position by 17 seconds, and I assume he's lapping about a second faster than David Dolphin anyway, as UFR versus XFR speed differences.
So we know that the current leader of the race is a member of Last Lap Motorsports. He's not driving under that name in this series, but he is nonetheless. Last Lap Motorsports have had quite a lot of success in the Open Endurance Cup in the past. Open Endurance Cup 3, which was in 2016, Last Lap Motorsports, they won that, and also in OEC 4 in 2019. Last Lap Motorsports won both classes actually in that championship.
So the Akagi team is a joint effort, I believe. It's Last Lap Motorsports and Team Sidus.
Okay, so there we go.
They've joined forces to create Akagi Red Suns, but I think we should stay with them for this lap, maybe ride on board, because whilst you were just talking about them, they went purple in split number 1, setting the fastest split time we've seen so far in the race, 51.91. The line for the second split is just a couple corners after this long straight that we've joined now, just after turn 12 and 13. We're on the straight now that separates turn 11 from turn number 12, and I'm curious to see if they can carry this pace through the lap, or even get close to their personal best splits later on in the lap, whether they can actually retake that fastest lap from Inferno. So the target to beat for the fastest lap, at least, is a 3-minute 1.44 that we just stated is way faster than the qualifying time that we saw earlier on, and to have it done in the race is incredible. But the second split was a 1:15.01, which is a very, very fast middle split. However, it's a couple hundredths shy of the fastest, which is again held by Takahashi. The best middle split is a 1:14.97, so they are 4 100ths of a second shy. So how can they manage the final sector? Turn 15 and 16, not too much of a challenge. Turn number 17, however, a whole different kettle of fish. And now, once we've rounded turn number 17. What can the Takahashi car, the Akagi Red Suns, do from P1 to try and get that fastest lap back? They're about to cross the line now. It is a personal best, a 3-minute 1.54, but it's just a tenth shy of the fastest lap at the moment. But with that fuel still coming out of the car, it's getting lighter. The temperature in the tyres look okay, and like we said, as the tyre wears, it doesn't necessarily perform worse in Live for Speed. So plenty of time for them to retake the fastest lap, and to be so fast right now and still have 7 attempts to take the fastest lap and be away by about a tenth so far. It's looking good for them out in the lead.
Yep. The number 75 made their life a little bit easier. The 75 would have dropped behind them regardless. I don't think the gap was big enough that the 75 would have come out ahead. Certainly would have dropped in between Eisbear and Takahashi, if not behind Eisbear. But thanks to the double puncture around about where we are now on the lap for Takahashi, Inferno drops to P3 from what looked like a very promising race for these two. It still is. Let's be realistic. It's still a podium for both of them. It's a long season, but yeah, it could have been a P. It could have been a 1-2 for the Sidus and LLM joint effort.
Yeah. So even though Inferno suffered the way they did in that car, they are around about a minute and 34 seconds behind the race leader. Because there's a minute and 4 that separate P1 and 2, and then Inferno is about 30 seconds back to Eisbear, sorry. But yeah, no, to see how slow they were and to get the puncture, was it turn 8, nurse that car all the way around and really only lose about a minute and a half, because the gap was quite small anyway when the puncture happened. They've done incredibly well. They're I don't even think they're half a lap down, because of the lap time here is just over 3 minutes. So
yeah, it's quite a long lap.
Of course, being at a different track, they could have lost a lap with the length being different, but no, I think they've done really well.
While we were focused at the front, the Lrf Class, which has been somewhat kind of we've not really been looking over there as much as we could have done, but the 2 cars in that class at the moment have just been close to each other, as Laszlo Kovac has put a lap over Fragmaster's number. So clearly with some great pace in the LX6, even after the long BOP pit stop that car would have served, number has been lapped in that class by Laszlo Kovac and Toga.
Yeah, I was going to say, you can see on that onboard shot just there the amount of opposite lock he was using to keep the rear in check through turn number 11. Now, his tyres aren't necessarily suffering by any means, but it's just like we were talking about earlier with the fact that the RAC only has one anti-roll bar. It's kind of a factor of the car. Like we said, it's designed to either be safe and understeery or fun and oversteery. And even though number is a lap down in class, there is only 2 cars in that class. He looks like he's having a blast, to be fair. The car is sideways controlled, of course, not
I think we can have a word with him, actually.
Dangerous.
Let's have a word with Number. Hey, Number.
Hello.
We
can
just
you hear me okay?
Yeah, we can hear you great, loud and clear. We just saw Laszlo Kovac put a lap over you, unfortunately. How has your race been in the RAC of all cars?
Interesting. I tried to stretch my tires for 2 stints, so that would be like 2.5 hours. But unfortunately, my rears, my left rear gave up a ghost without looking too bad. It felt like it has more tread, but yeah, it just blew. So I lost a lot of time because the car was really undrivable with one flat.
Yeah, that's fair enough. I wouldn't expect it to be great with one flat. If you continue going the way you're going, you're going to end up on the podium with some silverware. So I hope that you can keep your head down and finish the race. Obviously, a two-car class isn't what you were after really, and I hope we do get some more competitors in that class throughout the season. But what are you looking forward to most about the Open Endurance Cup?
Well, to be fair, I am quite disappointed because my team organizes GTI and Fox, and those two cars are probably most driven in LFS along with GTRs. And every time people ask for, I don't know, TBO, energy, class, they want something different. They want RAC, FZ5, LXS, and now when they get them, nobody drives it.
Yeah, well, this is one of the things. This is one of the things we were saying in the pre-show. If we, Live for Speed is in a tricky situation at the moment, and yeah, there are cars that people like to drive, and there are cars that people don't like to drive, and yeah, you mentioned that there's some people asking for these series, but until we make people aware of them, it's going to be tricky to get them to sign up. So hopefully, anybody who's watched this and has thought, I don't know, quite fancy this, get yourself along to the Open Endurance Cup. It's a great championship. It's got a good history. This is its 5th season, and yeah, get involved.
Yeah, I was going to say, we've got plenty of time until we get to round number 2, which is at West Hill on the 19th of July. So it's quite a big lengthy gap for you to register your interest and get up to speed, so to speak. But how are you finding that RAC anyway? Because we were watching you float it around the corners. I could see the back end drifting out. Are you comfortable with the way it's set up at the moment?
Well, I didn't practice it too much.
Oh wow!
Yeah, I was just staying in the middle because he could have picked anything. Okay.
Yeah, I heard him.
That's all.
Yeah.
I didn't practice it too much because I already saw that there's not much people in it. I just took a set I have for FE4R, adjusted it a bit. I think it's okay. It's a bit too understeery, but then again, I guess my rears would just burn off. If it would have more oversteer. I think it's a nice car to drive. I'm driving it mostly to show people that you can drive it for 3 hours. It's not a problem.
Oh yeah, the RAC is a great car.
Yeah. I love how it looks.
Oh yeah, it's a good looking car.
I just love driving it. I think it feels nice. But yeah, I'm just a bit disappointed that there's nobody else driving it. I think I have good pace, but there's no way to kind of compare.
Yeah.
I can only compare to UFR just demolishing me in every turn.
That's a fair comment, as we see Takagashi there going 2 wheels through turn number 1. Yeah, we hope there's a bit of a pickup in this class for the next round. I'm sure there will be. We know that a couple of people couldn't be here for round 1 in your class, but hopefully they'll be around for round number 2. Thanks for joining us, Number. Feel free to come and have a chat after the race, but we'll let you get back to it in the 5 laps that you have remaining in round number 1. Cheers.
Okay, thank you, man.
That was Fragmaster's Number, currently driving the number 22 machine.
It's always great to chat to drivers. It's even better when he's talking to us whilst lapping. I think that's a skill I don't have. I can't multitask. I can shout when I drive, but I can't necessarily engage in an interview like Numbers. So that's nice of him to come and chat to us.
Manhandling an RAC around AS5R while sounding very calm, except apart from the moment where was it Inferno? Yeah, Inferno kind of tried to get around him into the end of the back straight. Yeah,
just you can just see the huge speed difference and how late the UFR can be on the brakes, just because it is it's more of a race car than the RAC, with it being obviously less powerful, not by a lot though, but 200 kilograms lighter. The RAC is incredibly light at 800 kilograms, but the UFR at 600 is it's just in a league of its own. And yeah, how they the grip levels of those slick tyres can, you know, shorten the braking distance. You know, you can see the speed difference in the braking zone and how Inferno really caught right up to the back of the RAC there. But no, like Number said when we were chatting to him, he kept it in the middle, left either way open for the driver. We've got quite a wide track here at Aston, so no, they didn't tangle. Everything's well. So I'm going to check on Michael, see how he's getting on with his tyres, because it's been around about 14 or 15 laps since he pitted last time. We know he's got to do 20 laps on those tyres to get to the end, and every time he's got to round about, well, I say around about, I've just halved it down the middle really. 18 and a half laps is where he averaged to get without picking up a puncture on the rear left. It is looking a little thin, although the temperature is nice. It's not overheating.
If it is a lockup, that doesn't necessarily mean that the whole tyre will look thin.
Yes,
because it could just be one of the contact patches that's getting, you know, that's being under rotated more often, and that's the thing that happens in LFS. You can catch the same spot over and over again, and because the tyre physics in LFS is such that it does model lockups per contact patch.
yes.
You can be caught out by the little graphics that you get when you're viewing your tyres. Yeah.
When I've been looking at the graph, I've been like kind of keeping my eye on it just to see if I can see it flicker ever so slightly to maybe a contact patch that's a little thinner than the rest of the tyre. And I've also been looking for the colour as well, because of course if you are locking up on the same spot every time, as Michael gets it a bit sideways in the braking zone for the first chicane, just on because he's on lap 53 now, so he is one lap down on the leaders. Yeah, like I was saying, the temperature of the thinner part of the tyre that would be getting grabbed every time you wanted to brake, the same spot that would be locked up would be where you would have thought it would have been a bit hotter. So just keeping an eye out for the colour changes, but I'm not seeing anything yet.
In multiplayer, it's a little bit weird. You end up with kind of an average or a snapshot. You don't see the single player or when you're actually doing the driving. You don't see the little flickers. So it's harder as a spectator or as a viewer to see those. But I get what you mean. So Michael seems to be doing all right, but let's just keep our fingers crossed that he can manage to get around the track for. I mean, I don't know what the record is for the number of punctures for one car that I've seen in an endurance race, but for a 3-hour race, it's already, I think, the most punctures I've seen on a car. So poor Michael.
Oh, and that's numbers off. The number with that tail happy, but yet, when I asked him how the setup was, he said understeery kart. His tyres are okay. They're a little hot on the rears towards the inside, of course, because he's running quite a bit of camber on the RAC. But no punctures. Tyre life looks healthy. Could have been just a bit of a mistake if that rear end floats around on you just a little bit too far. It's very easy to grab a bit of grass, and at that point you are around.
Yeah. Well, hopefully he's not got any more damage than only cosmetic. He's got 3 laps to go, including this one, so not long for him to go. 3 hours is, I mean, I said before in the pre-show that 3 hours is easily possible. That was the wrong choice of words. It's still tough. A 3-hour stint is tough solo, but it's possible. And fair play to all the drivers here who've participated in this race in the solo class, deciding to do all of the driving themselves as a solo entry. It's great to see that. But yeah, there is also the option to team up, and drivers who have teamed up, of course, the PLT team, which is down to P11 right now, and also the car on your screen, Laszlo Kovac driving the LFS Hungaria LX6 at the lead of the Lrf class, made up of just Lacko and Number in this round. Not forgetting also Climbs and Cozzy as well in the number 7 machine. Who was driving with Last Lap Motorsports Sobies in the number 34? Was it Ripe? It was Ripe, wasn't it?
It was Ripe, yes.
So yeah, good distribution of team and solo entries. Takahashi is rounding the final corner to start what will be the penultimate lap of round 1.
So not long for our leader.
Around about 6 minutes-ish. Just
Yeah.
over.
Not long until he sees the checkered flag drop. Tyres look good for him. Nice and healthy, nothing marginal. Temperature's nice. I mean, pace is really nice as well. He's just done a fastest lap. Well, personal best anyway, a 3-minute 1.50. So getting closer to the fastest lap of the race. He is now 6/100th of a second shy of the fastest lap, which was set by Inferno, who's currently in P3. That was back on lap number 50. Sorry, lap 44. But yeah, Takahashi responded on lap 50, setting the best split one and getting closer to that fastest lap of the race, which I'm sure he wants as well. He's got plenty of time to play with. He's got 1:12 to I spare in P number 2 for Concept Racing, the number 42 car.
Yeah, as it stands, it doesn't look like we're going to see an XFR on the podium, as we're on board with David Dolphin as he's making his way past the Google Hub Racing team. He's going to go around on the inside of Climbs. Tries to get the car slowed down, does, and hits his apex nicely in the end. So David Dolphin currently in P number 4. The gap between the top 3 is pretty even, isn't it, Jack? Really, it's impressive that they're so close after 3 hours of driving. I know that Inferno's had a less than nominal run to P3,
Yeah.
but yeah.
Well, not even the double puncture, but unfortunately that drive through that the number 75 car received earlier in the race, I have no doubt that they'd still be trading times right at the front, both the number 1 and the number 75 car. At this stage in the race, had everything gone perfectly for them both. But this is racing.
Yeah, totally. Sobis for Last Lap Motorsport is currently in P5. He's not too far behind David Dolphin. Like I said, these drivers after 3 hours are really close together. Alex Coop, he is rounding the 180-degree left-hander before heading onto the back straight in P6. Matthew Dolphin in the Ultra Blue XFR in P7. Michael Malik, who is unfortunately due a puncture. Let's see if he can make it to the end without popping the rears again. He's in P8, which is remarkable considering the drama he's had. Climbs and Cozzy, they are in the number 7 XFR. They had a roll on lap 16 at turn number 1. That forced them to have to pit and rejoin, and that basically sealed their race really. They're down in P9. Paul Duffin in P number 10 also came a cropper and rolled the car at some point during the race and had to also pit and lose a lap as a result, unfortunately. PLT, these guys, they've had a Alberto and Iman, sorry, they have a lot of engine damage on this car, so they're around about 8 to 10 seconds slower per lap, we think, and they have been for some time. They were in P9, Jack? Was P9 the highest you remember these guys being in, or P8? Yeah, they were knocking on the door of P8.
They were very close in the top 10. I think they were comfortably in the top 10.
Yeah,
but...
P9 for sure. Yeah, they're currently in P11, so they've dropped down quite a bit. And Mr. Fetch for Gum Garage, he is currently in the final position in the NGT class, but not forgetting that we had 4 non-finishers in NGT from qualifying. Laszlo Kovac leads the Lrf class with a lap over Fragmaster's number, who had a bit of an accident a couple of laps ago, and as a result has a bit of damage. But Jack, do you want to take us on board for the final lap of round 1 of the OEC with Takahashi.
So, our race leader, they qualified on pole position, did the Akagi Red Suns. They were contested for the lead in the early stages of the race, trading positions and times and fastest splits with the Inferno car, which is Cruise Gods, number 75. But yeah, no, they're out in the lead at the moment, 1 minute and 15 seconds clear. Inferno's trying to do his best in third position to take away the fastest splits at the moment, so Inferno with the fastest lap takes split 1 and 3. But the Akagi Red Suns still hold true out in the race lead and fastest overall in at least one of the 3 sectors we have around Aston Grand Prix reverse as we approach the final sector now. Across the split line through turn number 14, you can see the Lrf Class RAC just in the background there.
Yeah,
So
number won't get
underneath
time to do another lap.
is this the cadet start and finish?
It is, yep.
Through turn number 16, which is this left-hander here. Are we going to see a turn 17 in style, or is this just a full lap to the finish line, using as much as the track on the left to take a late apex and take the shortest possible route onto the outside of turn number 17?
Beautiful.
Now it's just a straight line to the checkered flag. So both Takahashis behind the wheel of the Akagi Red Suns car put it on pole and didn't really put a foot wrong. They've done everything right today, and they take the checkered flag here for round number 1 of Open Endurance Cup 5. What a fantastic race we've had here today.
Number
Plenty of time until I could see the PLT car, unfortunately, was almost stationary there on the left as he was waiting, so he didn't have to do another painstakingly long lap with that engine damage. Meanwhile, in P number 2 we have the 42 Machine Concept Racing Ice Bear behind the wheel of this car. He's done incredibly well. Not really a mistake that we've seen from him all race long.
Well done to them. Yeah, well done to Concept Racing for Eyre to do 3 hours behind the wheel of that car.
Yeah, he's up actually a ton of positions from where he qualified also. Ice Bear put his car in P6 just behind Kai Prop, who unfortunately didn't make it past lap number 1, I think, struggling with connection issues. But for Ice Bear and for Concept Racing in general, they will be very happy with second position as they cross the line to seal the deal. 1 minute and 16 behind the leader, but the leaders had something that everybody else didn't today. They did everything right.
Next it will be Inferno. Expect to see in any minute now. Here he comes.
Yeah, so Inferno was the closest man to contest for the race lead in the early stages of the race, and I believe it would have been down really to the wire had they not regrettably picked up that drive-through penalty and a double puncture in the later stages of the race. So we've got David Dolphin at the moment to cross the line in P number 4, the highest finisher of any XFR for Launch Racing. What a drive from him, as you know, the Launch Racing cars drive in formation across the start finish line.
Yeah, well done to Launch Racing. They had 4 cars entered into this series, which is great. Really good to see those 4 deciding to go solo. So we just saw Laszlo Kovac come across the line to complete his race. And yeah, Jack, do you want to run down the full order in just a few moments once all the cars have completed the race?
Yeah, no problem. So how did you find that, Pete? I mean, we both were chatting before the race even commenced. We weren't sure how it would unfold, and was it as entertaining as you imagined, with unfortunately quite a small grid this week?
I don't think the grid mattered too much. Yes, of course, it would have been nice to see two classes with the same number of a similar number of cars in it, but yeah, the NGT class definitely served up some action. And yeah, a good season opener. I think it's a good place to build from here. Hopefully, we've managed to get the league out there, and hopefully a few more signups for the next round. We know that a couple of teams weren't able to participate today, but yeah, hopefully we end up with more next time. The racing itself today, really nice, clean, fair. Lots of great action, lots of great overtakes, and yeah, like I said, it sets us up for a good event going forward.
Yeah, it does indeed. I agree with you when you say the grid size doesn't matter. But I mean, the NGTR class was just so entertaining to watch, and if we get some more interest in the series, help it grow, that would be even better. But we had, unfortunately, 9 no-shows today, so the grid would have been a lot bigger if unfortunately everyone could have made it. But big plans for this league. It's looking great for round number 2, and what an opening race we have. I have the provisional race results for both classes, so I will start with the Lrf class. So Laco in the LX6, race time of 2 hours 57 minutes and 39.23 seconds. So yeah, brilliant to be out there, and it's so competitive in that LX6, and yeah, we'll have to see how the mandatory pit stop times will be adjusted for the next race, because of course they are tailored to each track that we attend in the Open Endurance Cup 5 season. Number for Frag Masters in P number 2 for the Lrf class. Unfortunately 2 laps down, but I mean, we spoke to him during the race. He was having a blast, really. But like us, unfortunately, disappointed that, the majority of, unfortunately, the no-shows today were in the Lrf class. So, like he said, there's plenty of interest in this class. So the FZ5, the RAC, and the LX6. And, yeah, it doesn't really get much close to just pure racing than this, because none of the cars are restricted. They're all different. They all have their own certain characteristics. They're better than others in some ways and worse than others in others. So if you have an inkling to drive either one of these cars, then get involved. You still can. There's plenty of time left. There's quite a spread between the racers, gives everybody else plenty of time to get used to their machinery. But we hope to see more on the grid in the Lrf class next time around, and I'm more than sure that we'll see plenty of cars next time around. Whereas in the NGT class, taking the win for Akagi Red Suns, which is a collaboration between Last Lap Motorsports and Team Sidus, who I'm sure you are all familiar with, took the checkered flag and very close to taking the fastest lap of the race as well. So both Takahashis did everything they needed to do to take the checkered flag and won by 76 seconds. So quite the margin to Ice Bear in P number 2 for Concept Racing, the number 42 green machine that we saw earlier on crossing the line. What a fantastic race they've had. They haven't really put a foot wrong either. Inferno for Cruise God in P number 3 was challenging for the lead in the opening stages of the races, and just unfortunately one thing after another added up for them. They still finish on the lead lap, albeit 98 seconds behind the race leader. However, they were the fastest car on track for a number of laps, taking the fastest first and third split and the fastest lap of the race. So one to watch out for next time around. We've got David Dolphin for Launch Racing in P number 4, the number 24 Launch Racing machine. Just over 2 minutes down on the race leader, but still on the lead lap. So a brilliant effort from him in the XFR, which is, of course, the slower of the 2 cars. But yeah, the pit stop differences sort of tried to iron that out, but the XFRs I still think are a bit slower than we think. But no, to be the highest finishing XFR, he's really only got to be happy with himself. He did miss out on the podium, but to get near it in the XFR and beat UFR is an achievement. So we have Sobis or Last Lap Motorsports in 5th place in the UFR, missing out on P4 by 16 seconds, missing out on the race lead by just shy of 3 minutes. So still on the lead lap, the last car to be on the lead lap. And in 6th place we have Coop for Launch Racing, David's teammate, in P number 6, number 17 car. Another XFR, unfortunately the first car to be a lap down, followed by Michael. Sorry, no, it's Matthew Dolphin and then Michael. So Matthew Dolphin for Launch Racing, also a lap down in the XFR. Then we have Michael for Free Candy Racing. I love that team name. Such a brilliant creative team name, and the skin to go along with it as well. It's great to see him in P number 8 after unfortunately suffering, I think it was 2 double punctures, finishing down in P8. In P9 we have Climbs for Google Hopf Racing Team. Pretty decent effort from them in the XFR to finish only a lap down on the leader after 3 hours of racing. And then we have Paul Duffin for Launch Racing in P number 10, again in the XFR, a couple laps down on our leader. Alberto for PLT. Now, Pocket Lugan team, unfortunately, suffering from the engine damage about halfway through that race. The worst money shift that they could have had, but at least they were able to finish the race around about 10 seconds a lap, slow due to the loss of power from potentially over-revving that engine in the braking zones. They finish nice in P11. P12 is the gum cart, the gum garage cart.
It is.
In P12, brilliant from them as well in the XFR to round out our NGT provisional results.
You did go through the LRF results, right?
Yeah, I went through them first.
Great.
There's only 2 of them in the class, though, unfortunately, so I thought I'd start with them.
Yeah, they deserve that. They did well to contest that on their own. Thilo, are you still here?
Are you there, Thilo?
Hey, yeah, I'm here.
Oh, hello. Apologies for that loud noise there. A few words to summarise your round 1 of your series.
So from my point of view, it was a decent season opener, apart from the grid size in LRFs, but I think Number already gave his point of view on those starting numbers. I think I don't have to add anything to it, except for if you like the LRFs. They are a really cool class. You can join them and then.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. It's a good base to work from.
Yeah. Apart from that, I think the actual on-track discipline was good.
Yeah, it's good.
There were no big incidents, as far as I'm aware. And yeah, I think at times you had fun commentating on it. At least it listened like
Absolutely.
that.
Yeah, we always do.
I got carried away a bit at the beginning there because of just the amount of action that was going on. I didn't want to shut up because it was just so rewarding to watch.
Mate. You need to pace yourself. It's a 3-hour race. It was good.
What an opener! What an opener that was to the Open Endurance Cup 5. The next round for the Open Endurance Cup will be at West Hill on the 19th of July next month. So plenty of time if you want to get involved. Feel free to do so. You can find the correct league area for Open Endurance Cup. If you wish to sign up, please feel free to jump over to the LFS forum and sign yourself up, and I hope to see you on the grid next time around. Feel free to check out our broadcast calendar. There are links to the series website if you want to sign up to any of the leagues that we broadcast here on Sim Broadcast TV. If you aren't already following, please consider following the channel. We've built up quite the community in the couple months that we've been broadcasting live. Myself, Pete, Thilo, we cover many other little championships on Live for Speed, and the next time we're live is on Tuesday the 23rd of June for Team Rock Racing Championship. We're round 25 at Fern Bay Green, reversed in the UF1, so that will be night and day contrasting to what you've seen today. So yeah, thank you very much for joining me and Peter Butcher and Thilo Falkenberg in the commentary box for round 1 of Open Endurance Cup 5. If you want to get involved, you know what to do. And is there any final words you want to say before we sign off, Pete and Thilo?
No, thanks to Thilo for organising, obviously, and thanks to all the drivers for putting in a great show, and also obviously thanks to the viewers that we have here.
Yeah, it's always nice to see the same familiar faces in chat every time we go live, and you guys are never afraid to get engaged. So thank you for that. We appreciate it. Obviously, Sim Broadcasts wouldn't be what it is without the viewers, of course, and it means a lot to us to have your guys' support. So without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and say goodbye from myself, Jack Eyre, Peter Butcher, and Thilo Falkenberg in the commentary box. We'll see you soon. Is there anything you want to say, Thilo, before we close up for the day?
Well, thank you for your broadcast, and I'm looking forward to the next round.
Yeah, me too, definitely. I want to see that LRF grid a bit bigger, because I think that there's definitely some exciting racing to be had there. We didn't even see an FZ5 on the grid this time around, and I'm sure there's more than one that signed up with that car of choice, so we'll see how they fare next time around in round 2. So,
yeah.
From
I mean,
everybody
I'm looking forward to some sleep just before we sign off.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Of course, if you don't know, me and Pete are still recovering from the 24-hour Le Mans that we started at 2 p.m. yesterday. So we are a bit hysterical. So that's probably why I got carried away at the race start.
Yeah, I need my bed.
Because after watching Le Mans for 24 hours and
Jack,
it being 25 hours before we passed another car, to see all that action at the start was brilliant. So thank you for enjoying it alongside us, guys, and we'll see you soon. Thank you. Bye-bye.